The dampness of the morning clung to the walls of the Red Keep, a tangible reminder that even King's Landing, steeped in heat and rife with dust, was not beyond the reach of clammy sea breezes. Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, stood in a quiet corridor overlooking the sprawl of the capital city, his gaze drifting out across the muddled rooftops. A sheen of mist lay over the harbor, and the ships rocking on gentle swells looked like silent watchers. He inhaled slowly, as if trying to draw courage from the salt-laden air. So much weighed on his shoulders: the discovery he had stumbled upon, the vow he had made to protect the realm, and the uncertain course he was about to chart. He could almost feel the presence of his forefathers, Starks long dead, urging him to do what was right. Yet he also felt the cunning, swirling whispers of King's Landing itself, urging caution. In his heart he knew the truth never stayed buried long, and perhaps in this moment it could tilt the future of the Seven Kingdoms. His breath caught when he heard footsteps approach from the other side of the corridor. It was Jory Castle, head of his guard, reliable as a steel blade in a storm. Jory looked at him, a question in his eyes. No words were needed. Both men understood the gravity of the matter. Ned's face was grim, set in lines as rigid as the stone around them. He needed to speak to Robert, alone, and soon. Perhaps it was mad to consider unseating the Lannisters' hold on the court so abruptly, but the alternative was far worse. If what he suspected proved true, the entire realm was in danger. Ned turned back to the window and watched the mist dissipate by degrees as the sun climbed. The day was new, untested, every bit as fragile as the moment in which he found himself. He closed his eyes briefly, remembering the last time he had felt such a sense of impending doom, outside the Tower of Joy, so many years ago, where everything had felt equally precarious. He reopened them to the stifling corridors of the Red Keep, to the cunning glint of polished floors, where serpents lay in wait behind every corner. This was a different kind of battlefield, yet just as dangerous. He moved quietly, Jory at his side, toward the council chamber. The polished doors loomed ahead, carved with the sigil of House Targaryen once upon a time, or so the old tales said. Now it bore the stag, proud symbol of House Baratheon, and seemed to glare down at Ned with an almost accusatory silence. His footsteps echoed in the hallway. Guards stationed outside nodded respectfully, but their expressions betrayed a slight wariness. Nothing in the Red Keep felt entirely safe any longer. Ned's arrival as Hand had unsettled existing alliances. The Lannisters loomed large, a golden shadow cast across every corner of the city. When he pushed the doors open, he found only two other men inside: Lord Renly Baratheon, the king's younger brother, and Grand Maester Pycelle. Renly, dressed in green velvet, was examining a sheaf of parchments. Pycelle stood by his side, offering quietly murmured insights in his ponderous, quavering voice. They both looked up, faces composed. Renly dipped his chin in welcome. Pycelle offered an even deeper bow that seemed to last a beat too long. "Lord Stark," Renly said, a polite greeting. "I did not expect you so early." Ned forced a tight smile. "I rise with the dawn in the north, my lord. Old habits die hard." Pycelle cleared his throat. "Your presence is always a boon, my lord Hand. The king has not yet arrived. Perhaps you would care to wait." Ned shook his head slightly. "Let the king come when he will. My patience can endure." He kept his tone neutral, but inside, he braced himself for the moment he would have to speak with Robert alone. For now, he seized the chance to gather scraps of information from the others, to glean a sense of how the court was shifting. "Has there been word from Casterly Rock?" he asked casually, though nothing was truly casual these days. Renly's forehead wrinkled slightly. "None that I have heard. Though I do know that the Queen's father, Lord Tywin, has been strangely quiet on many matters. That usually means he is watching, biding his time." A hint of wariness lingered in his voice. Even the flamboyant Renly, who so often lit up the council sessions with quips and sly observations, sounded subdued. Ned nodded, storing the information away. Tywin Lannister's silence was more ominous than any number of letters. "And the king?" he asked. "Any news of his morning?" Renly gave a slight shrug. "He was in the yard at dawn, smashing at a training dummy with that warhammer of his. I heard him bellowing from my bedchambers. By now he's likely working up a powerful thirst." Ned grunted an acknowledgement. Robert's temper had only grown more volatile of late. The weight of ruling had chipped away at the man Ned once knew, leaving behind a moody, unpredictable king who drowned his regrets in wine. But beneath that bluster, Ned still believed Robert to be the same man he had fought with during the rebellion. If he could reach that kernel of honor and courage, maybe, just maybe, the realm could be saved from a darker fate. He drifted away from Renly and Pycelle, not wanting to reveal his intentions. It was better they not know the full details of what he had discovered. Varys might well be lurking behind the walls, eavesdropping through secret passages. Littlefinger, cunning as any, would parse out Ned's intentions from a single ill-timed glance. No, Ned would trust only himself and a few select men until he knew exactly how to move. Even so, the knowledge weighed heavily on him, like a chain around his neck. He let the moment pass in silence. Grand Maester Pycelle soon droned on about some matter of the exchequer, about how the costs of the next tourney were draining the city coffers. Renly glanced at Ned, gave an exasperated roll of his eyes, and engaged in a half-hearted discussion on matters of coin, something that always tested Ned's patience. Yet as the swirl of words filled the hall, Ned found himself drifting in thought. He would see Robert soon, and he had to choose his words carefully. One misstep could cost him his life, or plunge the kingdom into chaos. Eventually, the doors burst open with dramatic flair. Robert Baratheon strode in, sweat gleaming on his brow, chest heaving from exertion, wearing a heavy leather jerkin over a cloth shirt that was drenched beneath the arms. His black hair hung in damp locks around his ruddy face, and his eyes still crackled with leftover adrenaline from his training. The king let out a boisterous laugh as he approached the table, grabbing a flagon of wine with one meaty hand. "Ah, my loyal subjects," he declared, half in jest, half in challenge. "And here I come, smelling of sweat and steel. One might think I'd care for better impressions, eh?" He poured himself a generous cup and drank deeply, a rivulet trickling down his beard. Ned inclined his head. "Your Grace." Robert met his old friend's eyes with a brief flicker of warmth that quickly cooled. He thumped the table and looked around at the small gathering. "Well, if we're to talk coin and letters and other such nonsense, best get on with it." Pycelle began droning about the day's agenda, but Robert cut him off with an impatient wave. "I have no mind for these details right now. I'll hear them in an hour. Leave me, all of you, except my hand." I'd speak with Ned alone. Renly traded a quick glance with Ned, curious but acquiescent. Pycelle bowed as if grateful to leave. Jory Castle stood by the door, his gaze protective, but he too withdrew at Ned's slight nod. The rush of footsteps in the corridor quickly faded, and the door closed with a thump, leaving the two friends facing each other in the hush of the council chamber. Robert sank heavily into a chair, letting out a long sigh. He refilled his cup, drank, and then gestured for Ned to take a seat as well. "All right," he grumbled, wiping sweat from his brow. "What is this about, Ned? I see a storm in those gray eyes of yours." Ned eased into the seat opposite Robert, feeling the tension coiling in his belly. "You know me too well," he replied, "and I fear you'll not like what I have to say. But it concerns the very future of your reign and the realm." Metzriskyo. Robert's forehead creased, and he set the cup down with deliberate care. "Gods, you always did know how to speak plain. Out with it then. I've half a mind to ride out hunting just to avoid more petty squabbles, but you're not one to meddle with trifles." Ned inhaled slowly. The moment felt precarious. He needed to phrase this carefully. "You've known me since we were boys. You know that I do not stir the pot for no cause. I have come across evidence, if you will, that casts grave doubts on the loyalty of the Lannisters. More specifically, on the legitimacy of their place in your bedchamber and at your side." "Yeah." Robert's face darkened, though confusion and stubborn denial flickered there too. "Are you speaking of Cersei? My queen? Your queen?" Ned leaned forward, lowering his voice as though even the walls might have ears. There is reason to believe the Lannisters have acted to put themselves above the crown, above your rightful rule. They have secrets, Robert. Secrets that could shatter the throne beneath your feet if not addressed. I beg you as your friend, listen to me. Lannister. Robert's hand balled into a fist on the table. He stared Ned down, searching for any sign of disloyalty, but found only unwavering concern. What do you imply? He said, words clipped. That my wife is... Be careful, Ned warned, though softly. There are ears everywhere. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, feeling the stubble beneath his palm. I believe the Queen has conspired with her brother Jaime, that the children she has borne might not be yours. I do not say this lightly. You deserve the truth, Robert, hard though it may be. Then Silence stretched between them for a long, suffocating moment. Robert stared at Ned as if he'd just transformed into a direwolf with flaming eyes. The king's breath quickened, and the cords in his neck stood out. He wrestled with this revelation. Outrage battling disbelief. Then he exhaled sharply, his voice brittle. You realize what you're saying is treasonous if untrue? Ned nodded. Aye. And if it were untrue, I would never speak it. But the proof is real. I've seen enough to convince me. And I suspect more evidence would come to light if we pressed. I'm certain you have noticed how different your children look. All three with golden hair, none with a trace of Baratheon black. There's more than that. But I've reason to believe the seeds of rebellion lie in the heart of the Lannisters' ambitions. Then, Robert's face lost some color, though his rage was simmering just beneath the surface. You dare bring me this filth about my queen? My children? He shoved back from the table, nearly toppling the chair. By the gods, Ned, I should... He broke off, eyes wild. Ned stood calmly, making no move to retreat. You can lash out at me if you will, Robert. I'll bear it, as I always have. But I have seen the same truth that Jon Arryn died for. He was following the same path of inquiry, and you know what became of him. The Lannisters were behind his demise. You can end their hold on power now, before their webs strangle the realm. Robert took a few heaving breaths, thick arms trembling with barely contained fury. Yet beneath that fury, Ned saw a flicker of devastation. If Cersei had betrayed him, if his children were not truly his, it would tear at Robert's soul. Slowly, the king sank back into his seat, pressing the heels of his hands against his eyes. He swore under his breath. Jon never told me. Why the hells didn't he come to me sooner? Why must everything be so damned complicated? Ned let the silence linger, giving Robert a moment to gather himself. He thought of Jon Arryn, remembered his kind eyes, his fatherly patience, how that man had served as a mentor to them both. Jon's death had rattled them, but Ned suspected it had rattled Robert in a different way, making him more prone to anger and self-doubt. The Lannisters have many watchers and killers at their beck and call. Jon paid the price for getting too close to the truth. I beg you, Robert, don't follow the same path. We must act swiftly, with resolve, and end this alliance with the Lannisters before it devours us all. Robert lowered his hands, and the haunted look in his eyes told Ned that the king believed him, at least enough to be filled with dread. End the alliance, the king echoed bitterly. That means sending Cersei back to Casterly Rock, or worse. What about my children? Do you expect me to cast them aside as well? Ned swallowed hard. He had no easy answers. In truth, that is a matter of succession. By all rights, if they are not of your blood, they cannot inherit. I know this is painful, but it is the law of gods and men. The king's stare bored into him. Law? Law might say a lot of things, Ned. But these children have grown believing I am their father. What will it do to the realm to name them bastards? The words cut the air like a knife. Ned had dreaded this conversation more than any other. He respected the codes of honor, the laws that bound the realm, but he also knew the heartbreak that these revelations would unleash. I cannot answer that for you, Robert. I can only tell you that to allow a false lineage to remain on the throne is to invite ruin upon us all. I ask you as a friend and as Hand of the King, do not let the Lannisters tighten their grip further. Robert stared at him for a long while. Then, slowly, He ran a hand over his face. "Gods be good, Ned. I cannot even think straight." With trembling hands, he reached for the flagon of wine, thought better of it, and pushed it away. "Not now," he muttered. "I need a clear head." Ned's chest tightened with relief and sorrow. At least Robert was wrestling with the truth rather than rejecting it outright. "We do not have to decide this moment," he said gently. "But the matter cannot wait long. The Lannisters will move quickly if they sense you know. Jaime is captain of your Kingsguard. He stands by your children, by the Queen, at every turn. You can't afford to let them corner you." "Nair." Robert tapped a finger on the table, jaw set, eyes shifting as if measuring the cost of every possible action. Finally, he let out a long, ragged breath. "I will end this alliance," he said, voice heavy with resignation. "But I must do it in a way that doesn't tear the kingdom apart. I'll need you by my side. On that, there can be no question." "I stand with you," Ned replied without hesitation. "We'll see this done for the sake of the realm, for the memory of Jon Arryn, who tried and failed to protect you, and for the promise we once made to each other, when we were only young men fighting a rebellion we believed in." Robert gave a short, humorless laugh. That was a lifetime ago, wasn't it? His gaze lingered on a distant point, and Ned wondered if the king was remembering the days of their youth, when everything had seemed so straightforward. Kill the Mad King, free the realm, restore honor to the Iron Throne. Now they faced treachery from the very heart of the monarchy. "Yes, Ned," Robert said quietly. "We'll see it done." The two men remained there for a time, letting the gravity of their decisions sink in. Eventually, the king motioned to the door. "Let us leave this chamber before I say something that walls should not hear. We'll speak privately again soon." They exited together, coming upon the expectant faces of guards and courtiers. The king's expression was black as a thundercloud, and none dared speak a word to him as he passed, strides short and bristling with tension. Ned followed at a respectful distance, ignoring the curious glances thrown his way. If any had questions, they kept them to themselves. The corridors seemed darker as they moved through them, as though a shadow had passed across the castle itself. Before long, Robert vanished into his private apartments, slamming the door behind him. Ned stood outside, uncertain if he should enter or leave the king to his brooding. Ultimately, he decided to grant Robert space. It was a heavy blow indeed, to learn of such deep betrayal within your own household. Ned could only hope that the king would not drown himself in wine or reckless rage. He prayed that the strong, decisive warrior he once knew would re-emerge and face this threat with the courage it demanded. Ned's own heart was not at ease. The course had been set, but that meant the real danger was only beginning. If Cersei sensed Robert's change of heart, or if one of her numerous spies overheard even a fragment of their discussion, the Lannisters might strike preemptively. Jaime was not called the Kingslayer for nothing, and Cersei's cunning was as formidable as her father's. They would not go down without drawing blood. The possibility of war between powerful houses loomed on the horizon. And if Robert vacillated or lost his nerve, if he let old resentments or battered pride distract him, the realm could tumble into chaos before Ned's eyes. Over the next hours, Ned sought out his daughters, hoping to ensure their safety in an increasingly hostile environment. He found Sansa in her chambers, practicing her stitching with her septa, and Arya was nowhere to be found, likely running loose in the corridors or training with wooden swords. The sight of Sansa, so demure and eager to please, tugged at Ned's heart. He feared for her innocence here in King's Landing. The court was no place for gentle hearts. Yet she smiled brightly upon seeing him, asked if she might accompany Queen Cersei at some function or other. Ned's heart clenched at the mention of the Queen, but he managed a faint smile, telling her softly that maybe it wasn't the best time. She looked disappointed. "But father, the Queen invited me personally." He laid a hand on her head, gently smoothing her auburn hair. "I know, my sweetling. But trust me, you'll not want to be too close to her in the coming days. He paused, searching for words. "I have matters to settle with the Queen. For now, stay with your septa, practice your sewing. We'll speak again soon." Her brow furrowed, sensing her father's unease, but she obeyed as always. Ned kissed her forehead and turned away, mind whirling. He sent Jory to seek out Arya, instructing him to keep her guarded discreetly. His younger daughter had a talent for vanishing, but he wanted to be sure she was protected. Though she might not realize the full threat, she was still a Stark, and in King's Landing, that alone was enough to make her a target. Hours passed in a blur of half-finished tasks and cautious whispers. He found himself in the library, scanning old ledgers that Jon Arryn had examined before his death, tracing lineages, hair colors, genealogies that all pointed to the same dreadful conclusion about the Queen's children. The dryness of the tomes was a comfort in some strange way, a tangible puzzle that required logic and diligence rather than political cunning. But even as he turned page after yellowed page, his thoughts kept circling back to Robert. Could the king truly sever ties with the Lannisters? How would the realm respond? When the candle had burned low, Ned heard footsteps approach. He glanced up to see Lord Petyr Baelish leaning against the doorframe, an amused expression on his face. Littlefinger, slender in his fine doublet, regarded Ned with a hint of mischief in his eyes. Burning the midnight oil, Lord Stark? Or are you searching for secrets that might topple the kingdom? Ned stiffened, feeling a surge of wariness. Did Littlefinger suspect? Petyr had a knack for sniffing out truths better hidden. A hand's work is never done. Surely you've more entertaining places to be than a dusty library. Dim. Littlefinger chuckled softly, stepping inside, his boots making the faintest echo on the stone floor. Perhaps, but I find dust and old secrets can be more interesting than a dice game in Flea Bottom. Of course, one must know what to look for. He paused near the table, glancing at the open pages. Lineages, Baratheon black hair in every generation. Fascinating indeed. Ned was tempted to snap the book shut, but instead, he let out a slow breath. State your business, Lord Baelish, if you have one. Petyr spread his hands in a gesture of feigned innocence. I only came to see how our dear hand was faring. Rumor says the king is in a dour mood, and that you and he had a private conversation. Rumors are such unreliable things, wouldn't you say? Ned's heart pounded, but he kept his face impassive. Very. You should give them no heed. A thin smile curved Petyr's lips. Oh, I rarely trust them, but I do find them illuminating. Sometimes, the shape of a rumor can reveal the shape of the truth. Do be careful, Lord Stark. The Red Keep is not a friendly place for those who poke at hidden wasps' nests. Nshpao. Ned closed the ledger slowly, meeting Littlefinger's gaze. I appreciate the warning, he said, though it cost him to speak courteously. But I know the difference between rumor and fact, and I do not require your counsel in sorting them. Petyr gave a slight bow, his eyes never leaving Ned's. No, I suppose you do not. Good evening, Lord Stark. With that, he turned and left, the soft swish of his cloak trailing behind him. Alone again, Ned let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He did not trust Baelish. The man claimed to have the interests of the realm at heart, but his eyes were always dancing with hidden schemes. Ned sensed that any advantage Petyr could glean from the king's changing allegiances, he would exploit. Best to keep him at arm's length. And yet, in a den of vipers, sometimes it took one serpent to outmaneuver another. The thought made Ned uneasy, but he knew alliances might shift in unpredictable ways once Robert took his stand. Ned returned to his rooms at last, feeling the weight of the day pressing on him like a physical burden. He thought about writing a letter to Catelyn, urging her to be cautious at the Eyrie, though she might well be en route back to Winterfell by now. He had insisted she visit her sister Lysa, Jon Arryn's widow, hoping to learn what secrets she held. But if the Lannisters discovered her journey, he rubbed his temples. The web was growing more tangled by the hour. A swift, decisive strike by Robert might still unravel the entire scheme, but it had to be done carefully. Turning the entire realm against House Lannister was no trivial matter. Tywin Lannister had a formidable army, gold to spare, and a cold, ruthless cunning that rivaled anyone's. If it came to outright war, the cost in blood would be high. Ned hated the idea of further bloodshed. But peace purchased at the price of deception was no peace at all. He undressed slowly, changing into a loose tunic for the night. Sleep seemed a distant prospect. He lit a small candle by his bedside, letting its flicker soothe his tired eyes. He settled on the edge of the bed, pondering the next steps. Robert would likely call on him soon, perhaps to plan the official course of severing ties with the Lannisters. Would he demand that Cersei leave at once? Summon Tywin to answer accusations? Reveal the children's parentage publicly? Each path was fraught with peril. An hour passed, and still Ned sat there, replaying the king's troubled face in his mind. At last, he blew out the candle, lay back on the bed, and closed his eyes. In the darkness, the images came to him unbidden. His father's execution at the hands of the Mad King, the lords of the North calling their banners, Robert raging across battlefields with his warhammer in hand, the birth of a new reign. Then came more recent visions. Cersei's enigmatic smile, Joffrey with his haughty sneer, Jaime with his glittering armor, the brand of Kingslayer forever marking him a man capable of betraying royal bonds. And behind them all, Tywin Lannister. Eyes of flint, pulling strings from the shadows. Sleep came in fitful snatches. Ned woke before dawn, a cold sweat clinging to his skin. Outside, the city was stirring to life. He dressed, fastening the wolf's headpin of the hand at his collar. One day at a time, he reminded himself. One move at a time. Robert had given his word he would end the alliance. That was the first step. But how they proceeded would determine everything. He left his chambers quietly and headed for the Godswood. In this southern city, the Godswood was a meager patch of green, with no heart tree to watch over the faithful. Still, he found what solace he could among the whispering leaves. He knelt by the little pool, its surface reflecting a gray sky. He bowed his head in prayer, thinking of the old gods, the nameless ones he had grown up revering. He prayed for the strength to do what must be done. He prayed for Robert's resolve, for his daughter's safety, for the realm to endure the coming tempest. When he finally rose, the sky had brightened, and the noise of the castle had grown. He turned and found himself face to face with Sir Barristan Selmy, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, a man whose honor and bravery were storied throughout the realm. Selmy wore a thoughtful expression. "You rise early, Lord Stark," he said quietly. Ned offered a respectful nod. "Old habits of the North, Sir Barristan. The dawn is my best time to think." Selmy's eyes flickered to the pool. "I trust you find some peace here, though it is a pale godswood compared to the ones in your homeland." Ned allowed a small smile. "It suffices." He studied the night for a moment. Sir Barristan was perhaps one of the few truly honorable men left in King's Landing. He had served the throne loyally through multiple reigns. If Robert truly meant to cast out the Lannisters, men like Selmy might be crucial to preventing bloodshed, or ensuring victory if bloodshed came. "I wonder, Sir Barristan," Ned began carefully, "how fares the king this morning? Have you seen him?" Selmy gave a short nod. "I have. He did not sleep well, from what I can gather. He was brooding in his solar, told me to leave him be." Ned grimaced inwardly, but he kept his composure. "I see. If you do speak with him again, tell him I am at his disposal whenever he wishes to talk." Selmy hesitated, choosing his words. "Is there reason for concern, my lord? The king has been out of sorts of late, but last night, he seemed more troubled than usual." Ned weighed how much he should reveal. "Troubled times often weigh on a king's mind, Sir Barristan. The burdens of the realm are heavy indeed." He left it at that, offering a faint smile. Selmy accepted the non-answer with a subdued nod. "I shall inform the king." Then, after a moment's pause, he added, "I hope you and he can guide the realm with wisdom in these days. The Seven know we have enough turmoil in the world without bringing it to our own doorstep." With that, he took his leave, the white cloak of the Kingsguard trailing behind him. Ned closed his eyes momentarily. Yes, the land bristled with unease. Raiders in the west, Greyjoy pirates on the seas, Dothraki hordes far across the narrow sea. And here they were, on the brink of tearing themselves apart from within. But he could not ignore the truth. Better to root out treachery now than let it fester. He made his way back toward the main keep, steeling himself for whatever the day would bring. The conversation with Robert was unfinished, and soon enough, the king would have to set the wheels in motion. The morning's light glowed across the Red Keep's walls, but to Ned, it felt like the hush before a thunderstorm. In the bustling corridors, he spotted Varys, the master of whisperers, gliding by in his soft slippers. The man smiled at Ned with practiced warmth. "Lord Stark," he greeted, bowing his plump frame in an elaborate flourish. "I trust you slept well." Ned offered a polite nod, though he felt an instinctive wariness coil within. "All's well, as can be expected." Varys clasped his hands before him. "So much is stirring in the city. One hears so many curious tales. I trust you are not overly concerned with trifles, my lord. Trifles have a way of becoming tragedies if left unattended." Ned kept his voice level. "I deal with matters as I must. If trifles become more, I will address them accordingly." Varys' eyes twinkled, as though he found this response immensely entertaining. "Of course. You are a dutiful man, Lord Stark. The realm is fortunate to have you." His words were smooth, disarmingly pleasant. "Well, I shan't keep you from your duties any longer. I imagine the king will want to see you soon." He glided away, leaving Ned with the chilling certainty that Varys knew far more than he let on. And if that was the case, it was only a matter of time before the entire court whispered of the breach between the Baratheon king and his Lannister queen. The question was, how soon would Cersei learn? Possibly she already suspected. The day stretched on, yet no summons came from Robert. Ned attended to small council matters, half listening as Petyr spoke of coin shortages, as Pycelle mumbled about supply lines. He caught a fleeting glimpse of Cersei herself passing through the corridors, her green eyes sweeping over him with an unreadable calm. She did not stop to speak, and Ned felt grateful for that moment's reprieve. She was graceful in her movements, wearing a gown of deep crimson, her golden hair woven in an intricate coil, a picture of regal composure, with the faintest hint of a smirk curving her lips. If she suspected the blow that was about to fall, she showed no fear. The hours blended together, tension building behind every interaction. Still, Ned kept his head high. He owed it to Robert, to Jon Arryn, to the realm, to see this through. By early evening, the king finally sent word. A simple message delivered by a page, instructing Ned to join him in his private solar. Ned went at once. He found Robert pacing restlessly, half a goblet of wine on the table, but apparently not yet drunk. The king looked up, eyes bloodshot. "Ned," he said hoarsely. "Come in." Ned shut the door behind him. "Your Grace." Robert blew out a weary breath. "I've been thinking all day. Remembering old battles, old victories. I was a better warrior than I am a king, I think. Sometimes I wish... Well, it doesn't matter what I wish." He raked a hand through his hair. "I need you to gather the men you trust. I'll need their swords and hearts in what is to come. I've decided the best course is to confront Cersei privately, give her a chance to flee before I announce it publicly. The children..." His voice caught. "I can't kill them, Ned, or harm them. If they're not mine, I don't want them on the throne. But neither will I see them murdered. I'm not the Mad King. Madam." Ned felt a surge of relief that Robert still clung to some vestige of mercy. "I understand. We will protect them. Keep them safe, even if they must be disinherited." Robert nodded. "Yes. Yes. It will still be a mess, but it's the only way I can reconcile it. Let Tywin curse my name. Let him march his armies if he dares. I will call the banners if need be. The North will stand with me. The Vale too, I trust, and the Stormlands are my own." A spark of the old Robert flared in his eyes. "I'm no babe to run from Lannister threats." Ned stepped forward. "No, my friend, you are not. We will stand by you. I will send word to those I trust. But we must move carefully, quickly, and keep the Queen unaware until the moment strikes." Robert drained the last of the wine, a single convulsive gulp. "Eh? We do it at dawn." He set the goblet down with a thud. "I've wrestled with this long enough. At dawn, I'll demand she face me in the throne room, with only a handful of witnesses. Yourself, Sir Barristan, and a few others I trust. We'll see how she answers the accusations." "Dawn?" Ned's heart pounded. Dawn was mere hours away. "As you say, Your Grace. I will ensure we are prepared." Robert reached out, clamped Ned's shoulder with surprising force. "Thank you, old friend," he said, voice thick. "I don't know if I'd have had the strength to do this without your prodding. God's help us all come tomorrow." Ned managed a tight smile. God's help us indeed. They parted ways, each lost in their own swirling thoughts. As Ned walked back through the corridors, a sense of unreality washed over him. Come dawn, the whole world might change. He prayed it would be for the better, that House Lannister's stranglehold would be broken cleanly, and that Robert would not lose himself in the process. The city outside glowed under torchlight, oblivious. Behind every window were countless lives that would be caught in the crossfire if war descended upon them. Darkness settled deeper over King's Landing. Ned stood by a window overlooking the Blackwater rush, the flickering lanterns on the water like lost spirits guiding him forward. He felt the weight of the North's expectations, of the vow he had made to protect Robert, of the memory of Jon Arryn's suspicious death. Tomorrow would be a day that shaped the realm's destiny, and if they did not tread carefully, the realm might bleed. Still, as the night stretched on, Ned Stark held fast to the conviction that in the end, truth must prevail. It was the only path he could walk, no matter how treacherous. And so he waited for dawn, the final hours slipping away with each steady beat of his heart. Hentai. A gray pall clung to the sky as dawn approached, casting the Red Keep into a series of brooding silhouettes. The torches still flickered, though the encroaching daylight slowly overpowered their warm light with a pale, cold glow. Ned Stark stood by the small window in his chamber, forearms resting on the stone ledge, eyes scanning the courtyard below. His breath felt unsteady. Sleep had slipped through his fingers, unwilling to abide in a mind burdened by secrets and looming conflict. He could see movement in the yard, servants bustling about, yawning guards taking the place of their overnight counterparts, a pair of stable boys leading horses to water. From above, their routine business seemed as ordinary as any day. Yet Ned knew this would be no ordinary day. He exhaled, pushing away from the window, and walked to the table where he had spread out an old map of King's Landing, dotted with small tokens to represent men he deemed trustworthy. The new morning's light, watery and uncertain, revealed dust motes dancing above the map. It felt as though the entire realm were poised on a precipice, waiting for a gust of wind that would send it plummeting. He methodically began stacking the tokens, returning them to a small pouch. Each represented a northern knight or guard, many of whom had traveled south with him, as well as a handful of men he believed loyal to Robert's cause. They were not numerous, but the measure of their loyalty was more precious than legions of uncertain swords. Jory Castle had spoken with them quietly throughout the night, instructing them to be ready by dawn, armed and watchful. A knock came at the door. Jory entered as Ned bid him, his face drawn but resolute. He had barely slept either, it seemed. Ned caught a glimpse of the steel beneath Jory's cloak, the glint of chainmail, and the hilt of a sword. "The men are waiting, my lord," Jory said quietly. "I've placed them in positions near the main hall, and a few are stationed outside the throne room. We'll have eyes on every corridor leading in." Ned nodded, tightening the pouch that held the tokens. "Good. If all goes as planned, we'll not need them. But if it comes to it, we must ensure the Lannisters don't trap the king or isolate him." He paused, glancing at Jory's face, reading the tension there. "I'd not have asked this of any man lightly." Jory dipped his head in respect. "You asked me to come south with you, my lord. And I said yes, knowing you'd only call on me in dire need. We all stand ready." Ned felt a surge of gratitude. "Very well. We move forward then. Let's join the king." They left the chamber together, stepping into the corridor where the air felt surprisingly cool, even in King's Landing. Ned's heart thudded in his chest, each step bringing him closer to the confrontation that might well change the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. The corridor opened onto a grand stair, which they descended in silence. Around them, the castle began to stir with the first real bustle of day. Servants whispered as they passed, eyes darting to the swords at Ned's and Jory's hips. Wordless tension clung to every stone. At the bottom of the stairs, they found Sir Barristan Selmy waiting with two Kingsguard knights, both stern and pale. Selmy inclined his head in a gesture halfway between greeting and solemn acknowledgement. "My lord Hand," he said, his voice low. "The king awaits in the throne room." Ned's brow furrowed. "Has he assembled everyone already?" Selmy glanced at the high doors leading into the throne room's antechamber. He wanted a moment alone inside. "I've kept the guards posted. The queen has not yet appeared." He hesitated, his normally placid face showing faint signs of worry. "I trust all is in order." Ned nodded. "We'll see soon enough." He swept his gaze across the assembled knights. Jaime Lannister was nowhere in sight, which might be a mercy or a trap. "Any sign of the Kingslayer?" One of the white-cloaked knights, Sir Meryn Trant, replied stiffly. "Sir Jaime is not on morning duty. He often attends the queen." Ned's jaw tightened. So Jaime might already be with Cersei, or at least close by. That could complicate matters. He turned to Selmy. "Stand ready, Sir Barristan. If Jaime appears, keep him in your sight at all times." The old knight gave a slight nod. "As you say." Ned entered the antechamber, then pushed through the towering doors that led into the throne room itself. Jory and Selmy followed, along with a smattering of other guards. The vast chamber yawned before them, illuminated by shafts of early sunlight piercing the high windows. Dust drifted in the beams, and every footstep echoed, giving the space an otherworldly hush. Tall columns flanked the center aisle, leading to the Iron Throne. A forbidding mass of twisted swords hammered together in the aftermath of Aegon's conquest. It loomed like a jagged beast of black iron, waiting for its occupant to pass a bloody judgment upon any who approached. Robert stood near the base of the throne's dais, arms folded, eyes fixed on a point in the distance. He wore no crown, only a heavy cloak of black fur that looked odd in the capital's warmth. He turned at the sound of Ned's arrival, offering a curt nod. Ned went to him, noticing the lines of tension etched in Robert's face. The king's hair stuck to his brow in damp streaks. Perhaps he had been pacing or wrestling with his own courage. "Your Grace," Ned murmured. "We are here." Robert exhaled, his breath almost a snarl. "Good. I've sent word for the Queen to join me." He glanced around at the emptiness of the throne room. "I wanted fewer eyes than normal, but enough to bear witness if it comes to that. I see you've brought your men." Ned turned, gesturing to where Jory and several others had stationed themselves discreetly near the columns. "They'll keep watch if needed." Robert nodded once, his jaw tight. "Very well. I want this done and over with." "Gods, Ned. I feel as if I'm about to charge a fortress alone." "No." Ned laid a hand on Robert's shoulder briefly, feeling the king's tension thrumming like a drawn bowstring. "You are not alone. Remember that." Before Robert could reply, the sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall. The queen swept in, her crimson skirts trailing behind her, her hair an intricate golden cascade that caught the morning light. Beside her strode Jaime Lannister, clad in the white armor of the King's Guard, but not bothering to conceal the regal arrogance that always hung about him. Their approach was regal, unhurried. Cersei's green eyes took in the gathered men, her expression calm, but not without the spark of challenge. She paused a few paces from Robert and let her gaze travel up to the throne, then shift to Ned, lingering there for an instant. Jaime came to a halt at her side, one hand resting casually on the hilt of his sword. "Your Grace," Cersei said sweetly, dipping in a shallow curtsy. "I was not expecting a summons so early." Robert regarded her in silence for a moment, his face a thundercloud. "We have matters to discuss, you and I." His voice echoed in the vast chamber. "Important matters that can no longer wait." Cersei's painted lips curved slightly, as though she found Robert's mood interesting. "Then by all means, let us speak. Unless your men have brought their swords to do the talking." Jaime gave a humorless smirk. "It does look rather tense in here, doesn't it? Has something happened we should know about?" Ned's hand settled on the pommel of his own sword, not drawing but letting it be seen. He observed Jaime, whose every posture reeked of readiness. The Kingslayer's eyes flicked to Ned, then to Robert, as though measuring who presented the greater threat. Robert took a step forward, and the look he directed at Cersei was unlike anything Ned had seen before. Rage, betrayal, and sorrow, all swirling in the king's stare. "I have discovered truths about our marriage," he began. "Truths that call into question every vow you ever took, every promise you made to be mine." Cersei's composed mask did not falter, yet Ned sensed a tremor beneath. "I see." Her voice was cool. "And might I ask what truths have come to you in the dead of night?" A muscle in Robert's cheek twitched. "Do not mock me, woman. I know. Jon Arryn knew it too, and he died for it. Ned Stark has found the same trail of evidence. You and your brother." He broke off, swallowing hard, as though the words were a poison in his throat. "I won't belabor the details. I know Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are not of my seed." Jaime's hand tightened on his sword, and a wave of tension rippled through the guards. Ned saw Jory's stance shift, half ready to intervene if the Kingslayer drew steel. Cersei, for her part, did not move. Her lips parted slightly, and for one instant Ned thought he saw genuine fear in her eyes. Then it disappeared behind a wall of regal defiance. "How dare you?" she said, her voice soft but underpinned by steel. "You dare accuse me of such a thing?" Robert's laugh was bitter as wormwood. "Oh, I dare. I have the proof. And even if I did not, the evidence in their features is glaring. Not a single one of them has the Baratheon coloring. They are all golden, like the Lannister line. Like your brother." Jaime's eyes narrowed. "What are you insinuating, my king?" Robert bellowed, the sound echoing off the columns. "I am insinuating nothing. I am stating it plainly. You have lain with your sister, and the children she bore are yours, not mine." Cersei's breath quickened. Ned saw her chest rise and fall, the slightest waver in her otherwise unwavering mask. Jaime straightened, and in that moment, the hostility in his eyes was no longer hidden. "That is a dangerous accusation, Robert," he said coldly. "And if it's false, it's treason to name the queen and her brother as adulterers." Robert thrust a finger in Jaime's face, spittle flying as he spoke. "Don't talk to me of treason, you Kingslayer. You are the last man in the realm who should lecture anyone on loyalty or oaths." Jaime's hand inched toward drawing his sword, but a stern look from Ser Barristan, and the weight of so many armed men, kept him in check. Cersei appeared to gather herself. Her voice turned icily measured. "Very well. Suppose these charges were true. What do you intend to do about it?" Nethermouthful. For a moment, Robert simply glared at her. Then his gaze cut to Ned, as though seeking a reminder of their plan. Ned spoke up, voice firm. "The alliance between House Baratheon and House Lannister is ended. You, Cersei, have broken your marriage vows. By law, that invalidates your standing as queen. The children, being not of Baratheon blood, cannot inherit the Iron Throne. Thus they are." He searched for the right phrase. "They are not to be considered heirs." A faint flicker of fury lit Cersei's eyes. "Bastards, you mean?" she said with quiet venom. "And what do you propose to slay them?" Ned bristled. "No. The king desires no harm come to them, but they will not remain at court as heirs to a throne they do not rightfully hold. They will be removed, and you with them." Robert's voice emerged, hoarse with the strain of every raw emotion swirling within him. "You'll go back to Casterly Rock, or wherever your father will have you. You can take them with you to raise them as you will, but they will not be called princes or princesses. And if you refuse, it will mean open war." Silence swelled. From his position near one of the columns, Ned could hear the faintest shifts of armor as the guards held their breaths, uncertain what might erupt. Jaime's knuckles whitened on his sword hilt. Cersei's face hardened, and for the briefest of instants, she looked like a cornered lioness ready to lash out. Then, slowly, she drew herself up, regal as ever. A small smile, deadly and resolute, curved her lips. "You think you can banish me?" she said, hardly above a whisper. "You think you can cast out my children? We are Lannisters, and we do not yield so easily." "Nancy." Robert's eyes flared with indignation, but he kept himself in check. "Do not mistake me. This is not a negotiation. It is the only mercy I'm inclined to grant you." Cersei turned her gaze to Ned. The hatred in her eyes was ice cold. and it chilled him despite the stifling warmth of the throne room. "And you, Lord Stark, you stand there so very righteous. You have opened a wound that will bleed the realm dry." Ned felt his stomach tighten. "The wound was yours to begin with, Your Grace," he said evenly. "I only exposed it to the light." Jaime finally spoke, his tone rough with contempt. "You speak as though you have the power to command the Lannisters. Yet you forget who holds the gold, who commands the West. If the Queen is forced out in disgrace, you invite the wrath of Casterly Rock. Are you prepared for that?" Robert took a swift stride forward, his fists clenched. "I am prepared for whatever your father dares. Better war than living under this damnable lie. Gods be good, I have lived with it long enough. My friend Jon Arryn died for it. You have made a mockery of me, of our throne. This ends now." "Nah." For several heartbeats, no one moved. It was Cersei who finally broke the stillness. She reached out and caught Jaime's wrist, staying his hand. She regarded her husband with an unreadable expression. Some mix of rage, cunning, and perhaps a flicker of regret. "I leave now," she said softly. "This kingdom will break itself apart. You will be inviting chaos." Ned's voice was calm, though he too felt the weight of that threat. "Chaos might come either way, but truth must stand above convenience, or we have no kingdom at all." "Nestor." A stillness like the hush before a storm settled over Cersei. Then she shook her head slowly. "You have no idea what you've begun." Her gaze flicked to Robert. "Do you think Father will accept this quietly? Do you think he will allow me, and his grandchildren, to be spurned by you?" Robert's silence was stony confirmation that he neither expected Tywin to remain idle, nor intended to be swayed by that threat. "I will do what I must." Jaime huffed a humorless laugh, as if he found the entire tableau grimly absurd. "Then may the gods protect us all," he said, "because neither side will yield. You've ensured that." Robert fixed Jaime with a look of pure hatred. "You speak of sides, Kingslayer, as though you've not already chosen yours. I know who stands behind you. I know who sired those children. You are lucky I do not demand your head this very instant." Jaime's lips twitched. "Try if you will." Cersei's hand remained on Jaime's wrist, preventing him from taking the challenge further. She turned her attention back to Robert. "Very well, my lord husband. If you command me to leave the capital, I will go. But do not doubt that this is not an end. It is a beginning." "Manwestenturi." A faint tremor ran through Robert, either from rage or heartbreak. Perhaps both. He looked upon her as though he hardly recognized the woman he had once called his queen. Then he gestured sharply at the king's guard. "Escort her to her chambers. She may gather her possessions. She leaves by sunset, and the children with her." Jaime, hearing that, bristled. "I'll not allow my sister to be manhandled." Barristan Selmy held out a placating hand before another clash could erupt. "Sir Jaime, we will show the queen all due courtesy. But these are the king's orders." Ned watched as Cersei's lips tightened. He could see the fury roiling in her eyes, but she curbed it with impressive will. She gave Robert one last look, then pivoted on her heel and swept toward the exit, Jaime at her side, the white-cloaked knights following. The echo of their footsteps faded across the polished floor. Robert let out a long, ragged breath. The king's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, the man seemed smaller than he had only minutes before. Ned felt a surge of pity for him, but also relief that it had not ended in bloodshed here and now. Yet the threat of war still hung in the air like a sword on a fraying rope. Jory approached quietly, glancing at Robert before addressing Ned. "Do we let them go unguarded to their chambers, my lord? The queen might attempt anything." Ned turned a questioning gaze to the king, who rubbed at his temples. "Station men outside her door," Robert said hoarsely. "No one goes in or out without my leave. If she tries to run before I give her leave, stop her. But let her gather what she needs." He closed his eyes, as though the pain in his head would tear him apart. "Ned, see it done." Ned nodded to Jory, who gave a swift bow and departed to make the arrangements. Then Ned turned back to Robert, stepping closer. "It's done," he said softly. "She will leave, and the children with her. The realm will need to be told. Carefully. Robert's jaw worked. Told what? That I was cuckolded all these years? That my children are not mine? His voice cracked at the end, and he stared off into the distance, anguish etched across his features. Gods, how did we come to this? Ned laid a hand on Robert's shoulder again, gently. I wish there was an easier path, but the truth is out, and you have chosen. It was the only honorable choice. Robert gave a bitter chuckle. Honor? Yes, well, it has always been your guiding star, Ned. And perhaps I should thank the gods you've brought it here, even if it feels like a sword through my heart. Ned allowed him a moment of silence. The echoes of the confrontation still reverberated in his mind. He could picture Cersei's face, pale with fury and humiliation. She was not one to accept defeat without cunning reprisals. We must act swiftly, he said quietly, to shore up your support. Once Tywin Lannister hears of this, we can expect a response, likely a harsh one. Robert nodded, face set, though sorrow lingered in his eyes. I'll call a meeting of the small council at midday. We'll discuss the official decree. Renly must be told, Stannis as well, though the latter is a stone-faced bastard if there ever was one. He'll not be thrilled, but I trust him more than most. Ned's mind ticked ahead, forming the next steps. And what of Littlefinger, Varys, Pycelle? He asked, naming the remaining small council members. They will want to shape how this is announced, or at least weigh in. Robert's lips curled in disgust. Let them weigh in. I'm the king. This is my realm, not a puppet show for them to steer. But yes, we must inform them properly to avoid rumors running wild. Though after this morning, I doubt we can contain it for long. Word travels fast in King's Landing. He let out a weary grunt and gestured for Ned to follow him from the throne room. We mean? Side by side, they made their way toward a smaller exit, away from prying eyes. Selmy and a few guards trailed at a respectful distance. As they walked through the corridor, Robert seemed lost in thought, half stumbling over the marble floor, as though under a heavy load. Ned took the lead, guiding him around a corner. At last, they reached a quieter alcove, near a set of windows overlooking the city. Robert paused, staring out at the rooftops bathed in the morning sun. Where is my warhammer when I need it? He muttered. I'd rather fight 1,000 battles with steel than face this damnable tangle. Ned's gaze swept the streets below, where common folk hustled and bustled with their daily routines, oblivious to the thunder gathering overhead. It may yet come to steel, he murmured. We have to be prepared for anything the Lannisters might do. Robert turned to Selmy. Barristan, you're an honorable man. Tell me, do you see any outcome here that does not end in blood? Selmy bowed his head, the white hair at his temples glinting. Your Grace, I believe we have taken a step that could spare many lives, giving the Queen leave to depart, rather than condemning her to a harsher fate. But war often follows humiliation. I will stand beside you, if it comes to that, though I pray it does not. Robert released a grim sigh, resting one hand on his belt. I see. Well, there is nothing else for it. We'll do what we must. In the meantime, have every watch commander alerted. I want no Lannister men-at-arms doing anything suspicious around the city. Selmy bowed again. I'll see it done, Your Grace. He turned to go, beckoning the subordinate. Ned gave him a nod of respect as he departed, then turned back to Robert. The king's expression grew distant. You know, he said in a low voice, I have a mind to ride for the countryside, get away from all this. But I suppose that is what a coward would do. Ned, thinking of the young Robert who had led rebellions and stood fearless on the battlefield, shook his head gently. You're no coward. The realm needs its king now more than ever. Abandon it, and the chaos will only multiply. Bebriat. Robert let a humorless chuckle escape. Yes, I know. Gods, I miss the days when all I had to do was swing a hammer and crack skulls. Everything was simpler then. He cast another glance out the window, then drew a ragged breath. Let's be on then. We have a council to prepare for, and have other matters to see to. They walked on, deeper into the Red Keep's corridors, with guards trailing behind like silent shadows. The hush was broken only by the occasional murmur of passing servants, or the shuffle of boots on stone. In the distance, Ned heard the faint ring of steel in a practice yard. It struck him how life continued unabated all around them. While at the highest levels of power, the realm shook under the weight of one family's betrayal. Word had spread with astonishing speed. Courtiers stared wide-eyed as Robert passed, their bows and curtsies tinged with uncertainty. Whispers rustled behind them, scattering like leaves in a gust of wind. Ned caught fragments, mention of the Queen, the King's fury, talk of bastards. The rumor mill was alive and thriving, and in a court as rife with intrigue as this one, half-truths and exaggerations would be swirling by midday. By the time Robert and Ned reached the council chamber, Pycelle was already there, fussing with his chain of office and muttering about being roused at such an early hour. Varys arrived moments later, stepping through the door with carefully measured concern. Petyr Baelish slipped in soon after, his mouth pressed into a curious half-smile that suggested he already knew more than most. Renly Baratheon came bursting in, hair still damp, a startled expression on his handsome face. He took one look at Robert and Ned, the tension in the room, and demanded an explanation. Robert slumped into the hand seat at the table rather than the king's seat at the head. He rubbed his temples as if staving off a headache. "We'll explain everything," he grumbled. "Sit." Varys, Baelish, Pycelle, and Renly exchanged uneasy glances but took their seats. Ned remained standing, hands clasped behind his back, waiting for Robert's signal. The king swallowed hard, then began a rough, weary voice. "I have dissolved my marriage to the Queen." Audible gasps fluttered around the table. Baelish feigned a cough to hide his immediate fascination. Varys laced his plump fingers, face falling into an expression of dismay. Pycelle spluttered something unintelligible. Renly's brows shot up. "Brother." "What?" Robert refused to meet anyone's eye, focusing instead on the tabletop. "I have discovered that the children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, are not mine. They are the offspring of Cersei and Jaime Lannister." "Nosbily Queens." Pycelle, clearly flustered, tugged at his chain. "Your Grace, that is a grave accusation." Renly looked aghast, and he struggled to find words. "Gods be good, Robert. Are you certain?" Ned answered for the king, calmly summarizing the same evidence that Jon Arryn had uncovered. The genealogies, the suspicious circumstances of Jon's death, the undeniable pattern of Baratheon black hair in all known descendants, except these 3 children. Jon Arryn discovered this and was silenced. Ned finished. Lord Stark took up the same inquiries. We confronted the Queen. She has not denied it. A thick, stunned silence followed. Petyr Baelish cleared his throat delicately. Not only does this plunge the realm into a precarious position, it also means there is no heir. His gaze flickered to Renly. Stannis is the next Baratheon brother, but, well, that has its own complexities. Robert rubbed a hand over his face. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, I've commanded the Queen to depart with her children by sunset. The alliance with House Lannister is at an end. Namnamo. Varys let out a theatrical sigh. Oh dear. Then we must be prepared for the inevitable consequences, my king. Lord Tywin will not sit idly by. Renly stood, pushing his chair back with enough force that it nearly toppled. Robert, you cannot just send Cersei away and expect Tywin to accept it. We need to plan how to secure our defenses. If the Lannisters march, the Crownlands could be ravaged before our banners can converge. Petyr stroked his neatly trimmed beard. It seems we will need gold for this defense, and quite a lot of it. He looked around, arching an eyebrow. The realm is not exactly flush with coin, given the past tournaments and the Crown's debts, much of which is owed to the Lannisters themselves. Robert let out a string of curses. Ned knew the truth of Baelish's words. Robert's own extravagances had led the Crown into substantial debt, much of it borrowed from Tywin Lannister. It was a twisted knot, and severing ties with the Lannisters would only tighten that financial noose. We'll find a way, Robert snapped. I'll not be beholden to that man's coin. If it means melting the gold from the Red Keep's ornaments, so be it. Varys spread his hands in a gesture of helpless concern. I fear it will take more than a few melted ornaments, Your Grace. Perhaps it would be wise to open negotiations. to assure Lord Tywin that no harm has come to his daughter or grandchildren. Renly nodded, anxious. We could attempt a diplomatic approach, let him know they've not been harmed, that you have no intention of harming them. That might stay his hand. Robert slouched further, glaring at the table. Diplomacy? With Tywin Lannister? That man would smile to your face while sharpening a blade for your back. But do as you will. Send him a raven or a dozen. Just don't expect him to roll over. No. Baelish leaned forward, eyes keen. Regardless, we must consider that the seat of power in the West belongs to the Lannisters. They have money, they have men, and they have cunning. If we cannot placate them, we should be prepared to defend. That means calling the banners. The question is, do we do it openly, or keep it discreet until we see how Tywin reeks? Robert looked to Ned. What say you, Stark? The North can muster a great force, but it's far from here. You know how slow ravens can be, and how long the journey is. Maester? Ned gave a grim nod. I can send word to Winterfell at once. Instruct Robb to begin gathering levies if needed. They won't march unless the threat is imminent, but they'll be ready. The Vale may help as well. Jon Arryn's memory is fresh there, and Lysa is my sister by marriage, though she may be unpredictable. At the mention of Lysa, Varys' eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Pycelle, still regaining his composure, cleared his throat. And the Riverlands? Hoster Tully is ill, but the Tully bannermen might be swayed by family loyalty, given Lord Stark is wed to a Tully daughter. Then, Baelish's smile was thin. Indeed, the Tullys might be called upon. I can pen a letter to Hoster Tully if that would help. Ned regarded Baelish with caution. Perhaps that will be necessary, but we should not fan the flames too soon. Robert, we should first see the Queen safely on her way. Renly gave a short, impatient nod. Agreed. Then we can brace for Tywin's reaction. Robert fixed each of them with a weary, angry glare. It seems I have no shortage of advisors now. All right, do what must be done. I'll speak with Stannis, see that he's prepared to step forward if the realm needs a new heir. As for me, I'd like to be alone with my thoughts. He rose abruptly, causing the chair to scrape across the floor. Ned, walk with me a moment. They exited the council chamber, leaving the others in tense discussion. Pycelle's voice followed them, rattling about lost alliances and potential ramifications, while Petyr Baelish's half-amused tone interjected points of strategy. Renly was exclaiming that the best approach might be to strike first. Varys made soft, disarming replies, urging caution. The swirl of clashing ideas faded behind the closing door. In the corridor, Robert paced, lips tight, fists knotted at his sides. Ned stepped alongside him, mindful to keep a respectful distance. The king's turmoil was palpable, as though it weighed on the air. How can a man stand tall when he learns everything he's built his life upon is a lie? Robert asked, not looking at Ned. My children, Ned. I held them, taught them, tried to love them, and now I learn they're not mine. My wife, a traitor in my own bed. I might have suspected once or twice, but I turned a blind eye, never daring to face it. Nayan. Ned weighed his reply carefully. Sometimes we hold on to illusions to spare ourselves pain. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Robert gave a short, humorless laugh. Human? Well, perhaps I should have been less human and more of a king. Then none of this would have festered. Ned looked away, noticing a servant hover in the corridor before retreating hastily. He guided Robert into a nearby alcove, away from prying ears. What's done is done. Now you've taken a step to set things right, at great personal cost. That is more than many would do. Robert closed his eyes, and for a moment, Ned feared he might break down entirely. Then the king's face hardened. I want no illusions about what may come. I won't be known as King Robert the Weak, undone by a Lannister scandal. I will stand, and if Tywin marches, let him do so. I swear I won't yield. Bodni Harar. Ned studied his old friend, and saw some spark of the warrior he had fought beside long ago. A kernel of iron that time and wine had not fully eroded. Then we shall prepare, Ned said. The north is yours, Robert. I will stand with you. Robert laid a heavy hand on Ned's shoulder. We fought side by side once, you and I, in a war for the throne. Now we may fight another, only this time the enemy is different. I never imagined my own queen. He grimaced, swallowing the words. Enough. Let's not brood further. I've had too much brooding already. Now. He abruptly straightened, squaring his broad shoulders. Have the men keep a watchful eye on the queen's chambers. I'll see her gone by sunset, and we'll see if the gods have any mercy on us after that. Ned inclined his head. I'll make sure the guards remain vigilant. Perhaps you'd do well to take some rest. You've not slept. Robert shrugged off the concern. I'll rest when I see her carriage pass through the gates. Until then, I'll find a way to keep myself occupied. He trudged away, leaving Ned in the alcove, mind churning with next steps. The day had barely begun, yet it already felt like an eternity of turmoil. Before the sun set, Cersei and her children would be sent away in disgrace. The fate of the realm hinged on how Tywin Lannister would respond. War or negotiation? Mercy or vengeance? Ned suspected Tywin would not countenance such an affront without retaliation. But at least Robert's action had been swift, preventing the Lannisters from drawing first blood at court. Perhaps that alone would tip the odds in their favor. Still, a knot of unease coiled in Ned's stomach. Cersei's final words echoed in his mind. You have no idea what you've begun. For all his convictions, Ned could not shake the sense that the Queen had plans in motion. Nor could he ignore Jaime's presence at her side, a Kingsguard in name, but a Lannister in soul. The memory of how the king's father and brother had died in the Mad King's halls haunted Ned still. He did not want to see Robert fall prey to betrayal in the same setting. He made his way along the corridors, conferring quietly with loyal men. He had messages dispatched by swift riders to the north, to Winterfell. In them, he wrote in veiled language about potential trouble and the need for readiness. He also penned a short missive to Catelyn, wherever she might be on her travels, praying it would find her swiftly. He kept the words vague, not wanting any raven to carry the full extent of the secret, if it were intercepted, but urgent enough that she would understand he needed her caution. By late morning, the castle hummed with a restless undercurrent. Servants whispered and darted about. Soldiers kept watch in every corridor, tension visible in their stance. The Queen remained in her chambers, the doors guarded by 4 loyal men from Ned's retinue, as well as Sir Barristan and another Kingsguard who had been sworn to obey the king. Jaime was not within those chambers at the time, having left to see about the children, though no one could say precisely where he was. Ned moved through the labyrinth of corridors, speaking with the stablemaster, ensuring a carriage was being prepared for the Queen's journey. He encountered Petyr Baelish along the way, who strolled with deceptive nonchalance, as though savoring the drama. Baelish inquired politely about how events would unfold at sunset, whether the Queen would truly be escorted out like a prisoner, or if some measure of dignity would remain. Ned had offered short, guarded answers, disliking the avid gleam in Petyr's eyes. After dismissing Baelish with a curt nod, Ned found himself in a secluded courtyard behind the castle's main stables. The air smelled of horses and hay, and the hustle of King's Landing was muted here, blocked by high walls. He took a moment to breathe, letting the relative calm wash over him. But it lasted only a moment before he heard footsteps approaching. He turned to see Arya peeking from behind a stack of hay bales, her big gray eyes shining with curiosity. She scampered forward when she realized she was caught, trying to compose herself in a manner far too serious for her age. "Father," she said. "What's happening? Everyone's talking about the Queen leaving." Ned's heart twisted. She was only a child, yet already so perceptive. "Nothing that concerns you, little one," he replied gently. "Some matters of the realm. Are you well?" She frowned. "I'm fine. Sansa's upset, though. She keeps asking if the wedding to Prince Joffrey is cancelled. She says it can't be, that she loves him." Arya rolled her eyes. "I told her she was being silly. But she's crying in her room." Ned closed his eyes, a wave of pity crashing over him. He had almost forgotten that Sansa was betrothed to Joffrey, An arrangement now void if the children were proven not Baratheons. "I'll speak with Sansa," he said softly. "But, Arya, I want you to stay close to your chambers for a while. Do not go wandering, especially not near the Queen's chambers. This is important." "But I'm Sir Wall." Arya looked both curious and stubborn. "I can take care of myself." Ned knelt and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know you can, but do this for me, will you?" She glanced away, then nodded reluctantly. "Yes, father." He pulled her into a brief hug, the warmth of her small form a comfort. Then he sent her on her way, watching her race around a corner with a child's boundless energy. In the midst of all these adult intrigues, the innocence of his children felt precarious, like a candle flame in a storm. With renewed determination, he straightened and headed back inside. Sunset drew inexorably nearer. He imagined Cersei in her chambers, perhaps packing furiously, or perhaps plotting some final maneuver. Perhaps she still hoped to sway Robert, or manipulate events so that she and her children remained. Yet Robert had made his stance clear. Ned prayed that in these final hours, no new calamity would befall them. He ascended a winding stair that led up to a rampart overlooking the Red Keep's main gates. From that vantage, one could see far across the city, all the way to the distant sprawl of Flea Bottom, and beyond that to the shimmering green waters of Blackwater Bay. He took a moment to survey the watch. Lannister guards had not yet been stripped of their duties, but many were being quietly replaced by men loyal to the crown, and Ned suspected that some Lannister guards had slipped away to the Queen's side. There was an uneasy commingling now, a tinderbox just waiting for a spark. In the courtyard below, a carriage stood waiting, flanked by a handful of men from the royal stables who looked exceedingly nervous. 4 horses, restive and pawing the ground, were harnessed to it. Further off, a pair of gold-cloaked city watchguards conversed in hushed tones. Ned exhaled. All of the pieces were in place for the Queen's departure. The question that loomed in his mind was how she would choose to depart, and whether the Lannisters would allow it to happen without a fight. He remained there until noon, keeping a vigilant watch. Then hunger and duty drove him back inside. He conferred again with Robert, who alternated between bursts of restless anger and spells of somber reflection. They spoke of the future, of how best to ensure the line of succession was maintained, perhaps with Stannis as heir. Robert did not relish the idea, but faced with losing the children he had believed his, he had few alternatives. As the sun dipped in the sky, the tension in the Red Keep became a living thing. Buzzing in every corridor, guards stationed themselves at key points. The small council hovered, uncertain if they should witness the Queen's departure or keep a respectable distance. Sansa remained in her room, weeping inconsolably over the loss of her betrothal. Arya sulked nearby, restless and resentful of being cooped up. Ned felt his heart torn, wishing he could comfort Sansa properly, but duty demanded every ounce of his focus now. An hour before sunset, the Queen emerged at last. Word traveled swiftly through the castle. She was descending the grand stair, her children in tow, accompanied by a retinue of Lannister men and 2 Kingsguard knights. Jaime was not among them. Ned intercepted them in the great hall, stepping forward to greet her. Robert was not present, having decided to avoid any final confrontation. Cersei held herself rigid as a carved statue. She wore traveling attire of deep burgundy. A heavy cloak draped across her shoulders, but it did not conceal her royal bearing. Myrcella clutched at her mother's hand, eyes wide with fear. Tommen, the youngest, looked on the verge of tears, clearly confused and frightened. Joffrey stood with fists clenched, face flushed with anger, glaring about as if he might lash out at anyone who crossed him. Ned's gaze flickered over the children, and his chest tightened with pity despite everything. They were, after all, children. This day was sure to scar them. He drew in a breath and inclined his head to the Queen with grave politeness. "Your carriage awaits," he said quietly. "Safe passage has been arranged for you and your children. The King wishes you to be escorted to Casterly Rock or wherever else you might choose in the west." Nender. Cersei regarded him with eyes that blazed green fire. "He doesn't have the decency to face me himself. Then again, I should have expected no better. She glanced at Joffrey, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. Come, my loves, we'll not linger in this cesspit a moment longer than we must. The children followed her, though Joffrey cast Ned a look of deep resentment. You'll regret this, Stark, he muttered, voice trembling with wounded pride. When I'm king, Ned interrupted quietly, though his tone was gentle. You will not be king, Joffrey. I'm sorry. Those words ignited a smoldering fury in the boy's eyes. But before he could retort, Cersei tugged him along, quickening their pace. The Lannister men fell in behind them, their stony faces betraying a mixture of anger and wariness. Ned and 4 of his guards followed at a careful distance. They moved through the courtyard, guards standing at attention on either side. The carriage loomed, horses already hooked and stamping the ground impatiently. Jory Castle stood by with a small contingent, ensuring no trouble erupted in these final moments. Without a word, Cersei and the children climbed into the carriage. The Lannister guards took positions on horseback beside it, some behind. Cersei leaned out for one last venomous glance at Ned, but said nothing. Then the door shut. Ned exchanged a nod with Jory. A driver cracked the reins, and the carriage began to roll forward. Wheels creaking. The gates swung open under the watchful eye of the city watch. The carriage passed through, into the city streets beyond, flanked by a handful of gold cloaks to prevent any interruption or riot. Ned watched them go, an ache forming in his chest. He remembered Sansa's illusions of being a princess, of wedding Joffrey, in a grand ceremony. That dream had shattered. However twisted the truth, it had once bound the houses together. Now, it was undone. Once the carriage was out of sight, Ned turned away, exchanging glances with Jory. Neither spoke. There was relief, yes, that no blood had been spilled here in the Red Keep. But the sense of an impending storm lingered. They both knew this was merely the first move in a larger game. Tywin Lannister would see this as an unforgivable slight. Still, Ned took a measure of solace in the fact that the Queen and her children had left with their lives. Whatever war might come, at least they had not become corpses at the foot of the Iron Throne. He closed his eyes and murmured a silent prayer to the old gods, thanking them for sparing King's Landing that horror. Turning on his heel, he made his way back into the keep, Jory at his side, feeling as though the walls themselves breathed with tense anticipation. The next hours and days would tell if they had averted a greater crisis or simply postponed it. One step at a time, Ned reminded himself. He had upheld honor, but the cost and consequence lay coiled in the future, waiting to strike. In the upper corridors, he found Robert standing alone, hands braced on a window ledge, staring out at the city below. The setting sun poured orange light across his broad shoulders. Ned approached quietly, uncertain what to say. The king did not turn. "Is it done?" Robert asked after a moment, voice ragged. Ned inclined his head, though Robert couldn't see it. "Yes, they're gone." Robert's shoulders heaved in a sigh that might have been relief or regret. Then he spoke quietly, more to himself than to Ned. "What have I lost? And what have I gained?" Ned had no ready answer. He stood beside the king in silence, looking over the sprawling rooftops and winding streets. Far in the distance, the carriage would be making its way through the capital's gates, carrying away the woman who had shared Robert's throne, carrying away the children he once believed his own. 1,000 other stories were unfolding in the city below, each ignorant of the momentous shift that had just taken place. Robert glanced sidelong at Ned, his face half illuminated by the fiery light of sunset. "I suppose I have to live with it now. This is the path I've chosen. Let the Lannisters do what they will. I'll not hide from them." Ned placed a hand on the ledge, letting the warm stone ground him. "We will stand together, Robert. The North is with you. The realm will survive this, one way or another, and at least the lie is gone. None of us need live in that shadow anymore." Robert let out a slow breath, then mustered a grim smile that did not touch his eyes. "We shall see if that is enough, old friend. We shall see." They stood there as the sun melted into the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and red. The day had brought a seismic shift to the Seven Kingdoms, but the deeper ramifications still lay in wait. As dusk claimed King's Landing, Both men felt the gathering darkness of uncertainty. In the hush of that moment, they could only stand together, bracing themselves for whatever dawn might bring next. Okay. The next morning came in a pale hush, creeping through the windows of the Red Keep with all the caution of a thief. Ned Stark rose from a brief, restless sleep and stood at the side of his bed, trying to clear his head. The events of yesterday felt like a half-remembered dream, yet one that left him with a knot of foreboding deep in his gut. Though Cersei and her children had departed in outward peace, the threat of Tywin Lannister's wrath was as certain as the sunrise. And if that promise of war weighed heavily upon the king, it weighed no less on Ned's mind. He dressed in silence, belting on his sword and tugging at the sleeves of a doublet that felt too warm for the southern climate. He wondered how Winterfell fared, so many leagues away, where the air was colder, but his heart had always felt more at ease. Here, in the capital, every shadow seemed dangerous, and the very stones of the castle seemed to whisper secrets. When he stepped into the corridor, he found Jory Castle waiting, eyes weary, but alert. Jory gave a slight bow. "My lord," he said, "a messenger arrived an hour ago. Says he carries a letter from the Vale. I had him wait in the hall until you were ready." Ned felt a rush of questions. From the Vale? Did he say who sent him? Jory shook his head. He claimed it was from Lady Lysa, though he didn't seem entirely certain. "I've not opened it, of course, but we can speak with him." Ned nodded. "Let us go to him. I'll read the letter, then see to the day's business." He paused, resting a hand on Jory's shoulder. "You look half dead with worry." Jory gave him a ghost of a smile. "It's been a long night, my lord. I had men patrolling every corridor, making certain no Lannister stragglers tried anything rash. Many of their household knights left the city shortly after the Queen's departure. But Jaime Lannister remains within these walls." Never see anywhere. Fessi had. Ned's brows drew together. "Jaime remains?" "Aye." "He has not been seen gathering his possessions, nor has he attempted to leave. No one knows if he plans to slip away under cover of night, or if he chooses to linger." Ned mulled this over, feeling tension coil inside him. It was strange indeed that the Kingslayer would stay behind after the Queen's disgrace. Yet Jaime had sworn vows to serve in the Kingsguard. For all his faults, perhaps he clung to that station like a shield. "We'll keep watch on him," Ned said. "But do nothing rash. If he draws steel, your men have authority to respond. Until then, we cannot simply drag him from the Red Keep." "No?" Jory inclined his head. "Understood, my lord." They moved on together, traversing the echoing corridors. Though it was early morning, servants bustled about, carrying linens or empty platters, eyes flicking nervously at the sight of Ned's sword. Ever since yesterday's upheaval, the keep felt on edge. The hush was that of a crowd waiting for a calamity to befall them. They reached a small side hall where a man of middling height waited, clad in travel-stained leathers. He looked exhausted, as if he had ridden hard through the night. He bowed awkwardly when Ned approached. "My lord Hand," the man said in a breathless voice. "I bring this from the Eyrie." He extended a small parchment sealed with a distinctive wax that Ned recognized as Lysa's crest, the falcon and moon. Ned took the parchment, thanked the messenger, and waved him aside for a moment. Breaking the seal, he unrolled the letter and scanned its contents. Brow creasing. Lysa's words were staccato and fearful. She wrote that she had received hints of movements from the west. Soldiers on the road, talk of gold wagons traveling swiftly toward Harrenhal, then turning north. She had also heard rumors that Tywin Lannister's men were calling banners quietly, possibly preparing a muster near the Golden Tooth. She implored Ned to consider the risk of traveling alone, warning that the roads might soon be unsafe for Starks or Arryn supporters. She also mentioned that she was reluctant to bring the Vale into open conflict, citing her concerns for her son, the young lord of the Eyrie. Yet a line at the end hinted she might be swayed if Robert Baratheon himself requested her aid in the name of justice for Jon Arryn. Ned closed the letter, feeling unease sharpen into clarity. Tywin had not wasted time. If he was moving men or coin in secret, it meant he was positioning himself for war. The mustering might be subtle so far. No grand declarations, no open calls. But the Lannister patriarch was too cunning to let the public see him assemble an army until he was ready. He turned to Jory, voice low. "We have our first confirmation that Tywin is on the move. The Vale's watchers say gold caravans and men are shifting in the western roads. No direct aggression yet, but it cannot be coincidence." Nah. Jory's expression darkened. "Do we inform the king at once?" "Yes, that is our next step. Spread the word among our men to remain alert, and send a reliable rider to Winterfell. I want them to have the latest news. If the West is mustering, the North must be prepared." Jory nodded and set off with purposeful strides. Ned lingered a moment, scribbling a quick response for Lysa, urging caution while also hinting that the realm might soon require the Vale's swords. Then he handed it to the messenger, instructing him to ride for the Eyrie at once. The man nodded, looking relieved at the chance to leave the oppressive atmosphere of the Red Keep. Once the messenger had departed, Ned went in search of the king. He found Robert in a private solar overlooking a courtyard where training dummies stood battered and forlorn. The king had apparently put them to use earlier. His jerkin was still damp with sweat, and his face gleamed ruddy with exertion. He paced restlessly back and forth, while Renly Baratheon stood nearby, a cup of water in one hand, attempting to keep up with his older brother's agitated stride. Ned entered quietly, though Robert noticed him immediately, dark eyes flicking up. The king's mood was written plainly on his face. Frustration, anger, and perhaps a tinge of old grief that had not subsided since Cersei's departure. Renly turned to Ned with relief, as if hoping the hand could quell Robert's roiling temper. "Your Grace," Ned said, dipping his head. "I bring news." Robert huffed a breath, halting his pacing. "I'm sure it's not the sort that will improve my temper, but speak it anyway." Ned stepped closer. "We have word that Tywin Lannister may be moving men and gold through the western roads, assembling quietly near the Golden Tooth or in that region. The Vale's informants spotted caravans. It's unconfirmed how large, but the signs are there." Robert wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. Damn him. So soon. I knew he'd not wait long. Does he think to gather a host and march straight here? "That is unclear," Ned replied. "He may bide his time, waiting to see if we strike first, or if some diplomatic overture can be made. But it seems certain he's preparing for the possibility of war." Renly's face drained of color. "We must act. If Tywin is calling his banners, the crown needs loyal men at the ready. We cannot afford to wait like lambs." Robert let out a snarl of frustration, slamming a fist into his open palm. "I'll not cower behind these walls while that old lion sharpens his claws. But neither do I want to march half-cocked. The realm is already uneasy. One false step and we'll have an open rebellion." Ned considered his words carefully. "We can call a partial muster, quietly, to defend the roads leading from the west into the Crown lands. Reinforce the garrisons at Harrenhal and those near the Gold Road. We don't announce it as a call to arms, only a strengthening of defenses. That may be enough to signal to Tywin we are not unprepared." Renly nodded vigorously. "Yes, that would be a measured approach, brother." Robert grunted. "Aye, do it. Send ravens to the lords of the Crown lands. Station men at Harrenhal. As for me, I'm half tempted to ride out with my hammer and remind Tywin that I'm still Robert Baratheon, not some feeble puppet. But I suppose that's the old warrior in me talking." Ned ventured a cautious suggestion. "Perhaps a royal progress through the region, Your Grace. You need not engage in battle, but your presence would rally loyalty and let Tywin see you're not idle." Robert paused, eyes flicking to the courtyard. "Yes, a progress might be good. I could look upon the lands, inspect my men, and ensure no Lannister incursion slips across the border. That would show the realm I'm still strong." "Wine. Impy." Renly brightened at the idea. "I can help organize it. We can bring a royal retinue, a small, well-chosen group, not an entire army. Show presence without provoking all-out war." The king nodded. Then, almost as an afterthought, he glanced at Ned. "I want you at my side hand. You know better than any how we must tread to avoid bloodshed, or to wage it if we must." Ned bowed slightly. "Of course, Your Grace. Whatever you need." "Then signal." A brief silence settled, heavy with unspoken fears. Then Robert rubbed his temples. "We'll discuss details at a council session in an hour. I want Pycelle, Varys, and Baelish to weigh in on how we handle coin for these troop movements. Gods, I hate thinking about coin. But I'd hate Tywin's gold paying for my downfall even more." Renly offered a thin smile. "You focus on being king, brother. Let us handle the ledgers and ravens." Robert only grunted. Ned decided to leave him to his thoughts. As he stepped out, he heard Renly begin talking about arrangements, and Robert's terse replies trailing off into the corridor. Outside, the castle had grown even busier, as though an invisible horn had sounded a warning. Guards bustled past, servants carried messages, and the tension was almost visible in the set of everyone's shoulders. Ned made his way toward the royal apartments, driven by a sense of duty to see how Sansa fared. The day before, she had locked herself away after learning her betrothal to Joffrey was effectively invalid. He felt guilt gnaw at him for not attending her sooner. As he approached, he saw Septa Mordain waiting in the hallway. Her face creased with pity. "She's calmer now," the Septa said softly, inclining her head at Ned. "But still confused. All she knows is that the prince is gone. Her dream of being queen is gone. I've tried to explain gently. She does not understand the gravity of these matters." Ned nodded. "Thank you, Septa. Let me speak with her." He tapped lightly on the door before letting himself in. The chamber was in moderate disarray. A half-finished gown tossed across a chair. The bedding rumpled. Sansa sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were red from weeping, though she raised them hopefully when she saw her father. "Father," she said, voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "Is it true? Joffrey's gone. I heard whispers that the queen left last night, and Joffrey with her. They said terrible things. That he's not really a prince at all. How could that be?" Ned swallowed, crossing the room to sit beside her. He laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My sweet girl. I wish I could shield you from these troubles. But yes, the queen and her children are gone from the city. Joffrey is not who we believed him to be. There were matters of blood and legitimacy. He isn't a true Baratheon heir." Sansa's eyes widened, tears pricking the corners. "But I loved him," she whispered, voice cracking. "He was going to be my husband. Why would you do this, father? How could you let him leave?" Ned's chest tightened. "Sometimes we must act in the interest of the realm, even if it hurts. I never wished to break your heart or to see you unhappy. But Joffrey was not the man you thought. And if you had married him, your life might have been built on lies." She sniffled, lowering her gaze to her lap. "He could be cruel at times. I saw that when he struck that butcher's boy, or when he said unkind things. But he was a prince, father. I wanted to be queen. It was my dream." Ned's heart ached at the earnestness in her voice. "I know, Sansa. I know how important this was to you. But trust me when I say that this dream would have become a nightmare." He stroked her hair lightly. "One day, you'll find a match that is true, one built on honest foundations. Until then, you are my daughter, and I want nothing but your safety and well-being." She let out a trembling breath, tears slowly leaking down her cheeks. "Will I ever see Joffrey again?" Ned hesitated. "It's unlikely. He will live in the West, with his family. If events turn to war, the gulf between us and House Lannister may only widen." She swallowed. "War, is that truly going to happen?" "It may," Ned said gently. "But we will do our best to avoid it. The king will try reason before steel, if Tywin Lannister allows it." He paused, then leaned in to catch Sansa's gaze. "You must stay strong now. Keep your head about you. This city is full of whispers. Do not trust everyone who comes to your door." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, father. I will do as you say." There was a flicker of resolve in her face, though the heartbreak still lingered. "Thank you for coming to me." He kissed her forehead, wishing he could spare her the harshness of King's Landing. "I'll come again soon," he promised. "We'll talk more." With that, he rose, leaving her in the company of Septa Mordain. The corridor outside felt strangely oppressive now that he carried the weight of his daughter's sorrow. So much had changed in so little time. He wondered how Catelyn would react when she learned of everything. Sansa's betrothal undone, the Lannisters ousted, war brewing. He feared the turmoil would only grow. At the far end of the hall, he caught sight of pettier Baelish rounding the corner, moving with his usual languid grace. Littlefinger paused when he saw Ned, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. "Lord Stark," he greeted. "You look as though you bear the burdens of a dozen kings. Might I offer some counsel to lighten the load?" Ned forced a measured tone. "Counsel, Baelish? I'd be glad if it were as valuable as you claim your coin to be." Baelish affected a wounded pout. "Oh, you wound me, my Lord Hand. I only came to say that I've heard rumors swirling like so many starlings in a storm. War with the West. The Queen's departure. One can hardly walk the corridors without bumping into speculation." Ned eyed him, uncertain what angle Baelish might be playing. "Yes, the city is rife with talk. Some of it is true." Pettier nodded, lips twitching into a wry half-smile. "For your sake, I hope it's the part about a mere standoff rather than open battle. War is so costly, especially when our coffers are as bare as a beggar's bowl." Ned stiffened. "We have not declared war. Tywin Lannister, however, might be preparing for it. Do you have any insight, Lord Baelish? I know your little birds can sometimes rival Varys in their capacity for tidbits." "Nandin?" Littlefinger gave a dramatic sigh. "I'll not pretend to match the spider's vast web of informants, but I do have a few tidings. Word from the Gold Cloaks near the Lion's Gate is that several Lannister men left in the dark hours, likely to join the Queen's retinue on the road. Yet Jaime remains, and he's been in conversation with certain members of the City Watch. What they discussed, I do not know. But if I were you, I'd keep an eye on him." "No." Ned's unease sharpened. Jaime speaking with the Watch was concerning. The Gold Cloaks were supposed to be loyal to the king, but bribery was always a possibility. "Thank you for the warning. I'll make sure the Watch is overseen by those I trust." Baelish offered a slight bow. "An excellent notion. Oh, and one more thing, if you'll indulge me. I hear the king plans a progress in the region around Harrenhal. You might consider how best to finance such a journey. Perhaps a small loan from a friend." His smile was sly as ever, eyes glittering with cunning. "We wouldn't want the royals sleeping in tents now, would we?" Ned's jaw tightened. "If the king deems the journey necessary, the crown will find a way to cover it. We have resources beyond begging for loans." Baelish spread his hands innocently. Of course. I only aim to help." "Good day, Lord Stark." He slipped away with that infuriating smirk still dancing on his lips. Ned exhaled, resisting the urge to curse aloud. The man was a snake, but an intelligent snake. Still, it was better to know of Jaime's possible dealings than to be caught unaware. As midday approached, Ned made his way to the council chamber. The table was lined with chairs for the small council: Pycelle, Varys, Baelish, Renly, and Stannis. Though Stannis had yet to return from Dragonstone, so his seat was empty. Robert arrived last, wearing a fresh tunic that failed to hide the tension in his shoulders. The meeting opened with Ned recounting what he had learned from the Vale and from other sources. Tywin's movements, the need to fortify key roads. Robert listened impatiently, tapping a finger on the table, while Pycelle cleared his throat repeatedly to point out the crown's financial straits. Baelish interjected sly suggestions about possible loans. Varys pursed his lips, urging caution lest any hasty move by the crown incite the West to open hostilities. At length, Robert banged his fist on the table, silencing them all. "Enough. We will reinforce Harrenhal, the Gold Road, and the major river crossings leading east. That is final. Write the orders, Pycelle. I'll sign them. As for coin, Baelish, I don't care how you do it, but find the gold. Take it from the royal treasury, borrow it, wring it from your brothels, just make it appear." "No." Baelish bowed his head in mock contrition. "Consider it done, your grace." Renly tapped a scroll in front of him. "And about the royal progress, do we fix a date?" Robert settled back with a tired nod. Yes. In 5 days I'll ride out with a retinue. Ned will come, Renly, Barristan, and Selmy, and enough men to show presence without drawing half the realm's armies. We'll head toward Harrenhal. See that the place is well defended. If Tywin moves, we'll know it soon enough. Varys spoke softly from his seat. If I may, Your Grace, rumor says Jaime Lannister remains in the city. Do we consider him a threat, or do we permit him to continue as King's Guard? Robert's face twisted in contempt. King's Guard indeed. I'd see him stripped of that white cloak and tried for treason if I had my way. But we have no direct proof he acted illegally here, only that he bedded his sister. As vile as that is, it's not a straightforward matter of the King's Guard oath. He glanced at Ned. Though I hardly trust him. Ned ventured a suggestion. Perhaps we can reassign him to a distant post. Station him at Dragonstone or Storm's End. Something that removes him from the city. That might reduce the chance of trouble. Robert considered that, lips thinning. All right. I'll speak with him directly. If he refuses, then by the gods, I'll have grounds to charge him for disobedience. Memshay. Varys dipped his head with a serene smile. As you say, Your Grace, I merely caution that a cornered lion is a dangerous beast. Robert let out a bitter laugh. No man knows that better than I. He turned to the council. If there's nothing else, let's prepare the necessary orders. We'll assemble supplies, horses, and men for the progress. Ned, stay a moment. The others stood to depart, though Baelish lingered, as if hoping to glean a private word. Robert shot him a glare, and he took the hint, bowing theatrically before exiting. Pycelle followed at a wobbly shuffle, while Varys swept out in near silence. Renly clasped Robert's shoulder, offering a reassuring glance, then left as well. Alone with Robert, Ned stood by the table, arms folded. The king ran a hand over his hair, letting out a sigh that deflated his chest. I'm a bloody mess, Ned, he muttered. I can't sleep. I keep remembering the look on Cersei's face when I confronted her. Gods, she deserved it, but still. Ned studied him with concern. You did the right thing, Robert. You couldn't let that falsehood continue. Jon Arryn paid for it with his life. Benepomo. Robert nodded, though his gaze dropped to the tabletop. I know, but it doesn't make it easier. Every time I close my eyes, I see my children. No, the children I thought were mine. Does that make me a fool? I gave them love in my own way, though maybe not enough. Joffrey I never much liked, but I still taught him to hold a sword. It's all gone to ashes now. Ned wanted to comfort him, but words felt insufficient. You are no fool. You were deceived by those closest to you. That would blind any man. Then, Dehimpen. Robert huffed. Perhaps. He straightened. Anyway, enough brooding. I'll speak to Jaime before we leave for the progress. I'll handle him as I must. As for you, just be sure the men are prepared. Once we reach Harrenhal, I'll want to see the muster for myself. Ned acknowledged the command with a nod. I'll see to it. Robert's mouth twisted. 7 hells, I need a drink. But it's too early. He managed a strained smile, gesturing for Ned to follow him out. Walk with me a moment. They left the chamber and descended a flight of stairs into a courtyard. The sky was bright but overcast, as though the sun were struggling behind a veil of gray. Servants and guards cleared the way for the king and the hand. Robert paused near a sparring ring where a pair of knights trained, exchanging blows with wooden swords. He watched them for a moment, arms folded, posture distant. Ned recalled the days of rebellion, when Robert had been in his element on the battlefield, hammer swinging, voice roaring. Now the king seemed hollowed, a man wrestling with ghosts and regrets. At length, Robert turned away from the sparring ring, scowling. We're not so different, you and I, Ned, he said softly. We fought for a crown we believed in. Now look at us. One of us lost everything he thought was family. The other clings to honor as the wolves close in. Is this what we wanted when we raised our banners all those years ago? Ned gave a somber shake of his head. We wanted to free the realm from a tyrant. We succeeded in that. But peace and good kingship are different battles. Harder, perhaps. Robert's mouth slanted in a bitter line. Yes, well. Let us hope we haven't doomed the realm to another war. Best I can do is face Tywin head-on if it comes to that. Ned and I so. Ned placed a hand on Robert's shoulder. The North stands behind you, my friend. If Tywin marches, so shall we. If we can find a resolution in words, so be it. Robert nodded, exhaling slowly. Thank you. It means a great deal. They parted ways in the courtyard, Robert returning to the keep, while Ned set off to check with the stable master and the guard captains about the upcoming journey. He meticulously planned the retinue's composition. A balance of loyal knights from the north and some Crownlanders the king trusted, plus members of the King's Guard, except for Jaime, who was to be reassigned if Robert had his way. By late afternoon, Ned had sorted out a dozen pressing tasks. Food stores for the journey, new shifts of watchers on the gates, missives sent to several lords in the Riverlands regarding the king's progress. He thought fleetingly of Lady Catelyn, wondering how close she was to returning, or if she had ventured elsewhere on her investigations. He longed for her presence in King's Landing, though part of him was grateful she was away from this tinderbox. As the sun dipped lower, Ned found himself once again climbing stairs to a lonely hall, following vague directions that Robert had gone this way, seeking Jaime Lannister. Indeed, as he approached an open door leading into an unused council room, he heard low voices. He paused, eavesdropping out of instinct. "The nerve to ask me to leave the city," Jaime was saying, his tone mocking. "Strip me of my white cloak, perhaps." Let him try. There was a metallic scrape, as though he were adjusting his sword belt. Robert's reply came in a guttural snarl. "Don't test me, Kingslayer. You're lucky I don't string you up for treason. You bedded my wife. You fathered those children. You put this entire realm in jeopardy." Jaime let out a harsh bark of laughter. "Your wife? She's a Lannister, through and through. And if you weren't so busy swilling wine and chasing whores, you might have noticed her treachery sooner. Don't blame me for your blind stupidity." Ned tensed, peering through the open door. Jaime stood in the center of the room, a hand on his hilt, posture coiled with arrogance. Robert faced him, fists clenched. No other guards were present, which made the situation precarious indeed. Robert lurched forward a step, raising his voice. "You dare speak to me like that? By the gods, I'll—" Jaime's lips curled. "You'll what? Kill me? You've let me live this long. If I recall, I'm still a sworn member of your King's Guard, though you might prefer a less conflicted knight to guard your back these days." Robert's face was reddening, the pulse throbbing in his neck. "I'm giving you an order, Lannister. You will leave King's Landing within 2 days, go to Dragonstone and serve there away from my sight. If you refuse, I'll have you arrested for disobedience of the crown." Jaime's smile was a blade's edge. He toyed with the pommel of his sword. "Arrest me then. See if your men can manage it before I cut a path through them. Or through you." Ned could stand by no longer. He stepped into the doorway, voice firm. "Sir Jaime, mind your tongue. Threatening the king is treason." They both turned. Robert's face twisted with relief at the sight of Ned, though frustration still seethed beneath the surface. Jaime's gaze flicked to Ned, a flicker of resentment. "Ah, the Honorable Hand himself. Come to scold me with your northern righteousness." Ned forced himself to remain calm. "I have come to keep the peace. The king has given you a command, Sir Jaime." Jaime's laughter was cold. "And who will enforce it, Stark? You and your men. If you think to corner me, remember that the last time I dealt with a king, I ended him myself." "And Rao." Robert's eyes darkened at the reminder of how Jaime had slain the Mad King. He slammed a hand on the table. "I'm not that mad fool. And these are not the same times, Lannister. You'll obey or you'll answer to the entire realm. Even your father can't protect you if you draw steel on your kin." Jaime tilted his head, eyes flicking between Robert and Ned. He let the tension draw out, as though enjoying it. Finally, he gave a slight shrug. "Fine. I'll leave this cesspit. But do not imagine for a moment that House Lannister will forget what you've done to my sister. Or my children." The last words dripped with cold fury. We are lions, Baratheon. Poke us at your peril. Robert's fist tightened, but he let out a shaky breath. Get out then. Now, before I change my mind. Jaime inclined his head in a mocking bow, then swept past Ned, giving him a look of contempt. I suppose you think you've done a noble thing, breaking up a family, exposing a scandal. But you've only lit a fuse. When the explosions come, remember this day. Ned refused to be baited. He held Jaime's glare steadily, then watched him go. Once Jaime's footsteps had receded, Ned stepped fully inside. Robert sank into a chair, breathing hard as though he had just waged a physical fight. By all the gods, the king muttered, pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes. What a vile bastard he is. I'd have killed him if you hadn't come along. He let out a shuddering exhale. But it's better this way. He's leaving. That's one less Lannister to worry about here. Ned remained standing. It's better he leaves than starts a bloodbath in the Red Keep. He'll likely ride to join Cersei, or back to Casterly Rock. His mind churned with the ramifications. Jaime would undoubtedly inform Tywin of everything he'd seen, perhaps twisting details to stoke Tywin's rage. Robert looked up, eyes bleary with emotion. I can't abide the sight of him. Let him go. Let him go spin tales to his father. If Tywin wants to come for me, let him come. I'll not be caged in my own castle. He rapped his knuckles on the table. The progress goes forward. Let the realm see I am king. Let them see I fear no Lannister. Ned inclined his head. Then we continue preparations. If Jaime departs by morning, the city will be rid of him soon enough. Robert rose, pacing to the window that overlooked the yard. Outside, the sky had turned a bruised purple, streaked with the last glimmers of daylight. Torches would be lit soon. I need a drink, he muttered again, then caught himself, glancing at Ned. And I need to keep my wits. Gods, I hate this. Too many nights I've dulled my senses with wine, and look what that earned me. A wife who betrayed me under my own nose. Ned approached him, voice gentle. We can only move forward. If drink keeps you from sleeping, perhaps you should seek other solace. You're still a warrior, Robert. Train, ride, do something that clears your mind. Robert gave a short grunt. I might do that. A good hunt, maybe. Though the last time I hunted boar, I nearly got my leg ripped open. A flicker of old humor touched his face and vanished. Yes, well, enough. Return to your duties, Ned. I'll see you at dawn for final arrangements. Ned bowed and departed. He walked through the halls, torchlight flickering on stone, men's voices echoing in corners. The guards seemed more numerous than ever, as though the Red Keep had sprouted eyes. He felt a chill despite the southern warmth. Jaime's words played in his mind. We are lions. Poke us at your peril. The future seemed poised to unravel in blood, if negotiations failed. When he returned to his chambers, he found Arya there, perched on a window seat with her legs folded beneath her. She looked up sharply as Ned entered, then tried to mask her excitement. Father, she said, did you hear? The Kingslayer's leaving the city. Some of the guards were talking about it. The center. Ned loosened the collar of his doublet. Word travels fast. Yes, he leaves soon. Arya's eyes gleamed with curiosity. He's dangerous, isn't he? He killed the Mad King, they say, and he's one of the best swordsmen in the realm. Ned nodded, feeling a father's protective instinct stir. Yes, he's dangerous indeed. That's why I want you to avoid him at all costs, and any other Lannister men still lurking around. Promise me, Arya. She pursed her lips. I promise, she said, though the sparkle in her eyes suggested she was thinking of all the ways she might slip away unnoticed. He approached her, kneeling so their gazes met. Listen to me, girl. The city is tense. Tempers are flaring. One careless word, one wrong step, it could mean trouble for any of us. She fidgeted, but nodded earnestly. I understand. Ned believed she meant it, though he knew Arya's restless nature. He rose with a sigh, glancing around to ensure no curious ears were near. Stay close to your sister if you can. And if you practice with Syrio Forel, do it in private. We don't need more rumors. Arya straightened her shoulders at the mention of her dancing master. Sirio says, "Fear cuts deeper than swords." Ned managed a small fond smile. A wise saying. He ruffled her hair gently. "But caution is not always fear. Remember that." She nodded, then slipped past him, off to wherever she liked to roam. Ned watched her vanish into the corridor, half admiring her spirit, half fearing the trouble it might bring. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and sank onto a chair, exhaustion settling over him like a heavy cloak. He wished he could close his eyes and wake in Winterfell, his wife beside him, his children safe. But the burdens of the realm pressed too heavily. That night, as the torches were lit and the moon rose behind drifting clouds, Ned found himself summoned again, this time to a private courtyard. The summons bore the seal of Varys. He hesitated, uncertain whether to trust the spider's request. But curiosity and necessity drew him on. He arrived to find the courtyard empty, save for Varys leaning against a low wall, hands clasped in front of his well-padded frame. "My lord Hand," Varys greeted in a hushed voice, glancing around as though expecting ghosts to materialize. "Thank you for answering my summons." Ned approached warily. "I've not the time for games, Varys. If you have something to say, speak plainly." The spider inclined his head. "Plainly then. I've heard of your plans for a royal progress. I admire the subtlety of it, but I caution you that Tywin Lannister is seldom swayed by shows of strength. He respects only results. If he truly believes the king has wronged his family, he will not remain idle." Ned folded his arms. "We're aware of the threat. That's why we're preparing." Varys' face was full of sympathetic dismay. "I fear the realm's position is more tenuous than even you suspect. Whispers tell me that the Lannisters have already courted alliances with certain lords in the Reach, possibly even the Iron Islands. Gold can buy many swords." Ned felt a jolt of alarm. The Iron Islands? They rebelled not so long ago. Would they risk another confrontation with the crown? Varys shrugged lightly. "Balon Greyjoy is proud. Tywin's gold might tempt him to raid coastal areas, forcing the king to split his forces. That is precisely the kind of cunning strategy Lord Tywin employs. Strike from multiple fronts, overwhelm the crown's capacity to respond." Then? Ned's mind churned with the possibilities. "We'll need to warn the lords of the western coasts, ensure the navy is watchful." Varys nodded. "Indeed, though the crown's navy is not what it once was. My hope is that word of that warning will make the Ironborn reconsider. I wanted you to know, my lord, so that you might advise the king accordingly." "The error?" Ned studied Varys' plump face. "Why tell me this? Surely you could have revealed it at the council meeting." Varys gave a delicate smile. "Some truths are best shared discreetly at first, to avoid panic or suspicion. If I announced it in open council, Baelish might pry into my sources, Pycelle might scoff, and the king might ignore it in his pride. I trust you to wield it more carefully. I have no wish to see the realm ravaged by war." Ned weighed the sincerity of the man's words. Varys' motives were ever hidden, but so far, he had given Ned no reason to doubt his desire for stability. "Thank you for bringing it to me. I'll speak with Robert, quietly." Varys inclined his head in gratitude. "I hope that will suffice to avert a crisis on the seas. Should you need any further tidings, you know where to find me." With that, he glided away, leaving Ned alone in the courtyard. The moon's silver light glinted off the damp stones, and a breeze carried the faint scent of the sea. The vision of a multi-front war, Lannisters from the west, Ironborn along the coasts, was an ominous one. Ned had no illusions about the crown's fragility if it faced too many enemies at once. The realm might splinter, and thousands would die. He breathed in, steadying himself. Come dawn, he would lay this new threat before Robert, urge him to expand the watch on the seas. Another worry stacked atop so many others. Even so, he told himself that knowledge was power. With enough caution and swift action, perhaps they could thwart Tywin's attempts to ally with Balon Greyjoy. But the path ahead was like walking a razor's edge. Returning to his chambers proved difficult. Everywhere he walked, a hush of apprehension seemed to follow. He finally reached his door and went inside, bolting it behind him. There, in the lone circle of candlelight, He scribbled letters, one to Lord Manderley in White Harbor, asking him to keep alert for Ironborn movements, another to Lord Hoster Tully's stewards to watch the Riverlands for any infiltration. He paused over a letter to the Eyrie, deciding it was enough for the moment to have written earlier. Once he had sealed them, he blew out the candle. The darkness felt oppressive, but he resisted the urge to kindle another flame. He let himself sink onto the bed, though he did not bother removing his boots or sword belt. He lay there in the gloom, eyes open, thoughts racing. Every time he tried to foresee the shape of the future, it seemed to shift like quicksand beneath his feet. Eventually, a shallow, dreamless sleep overtook him. He woke before dawn, heart pounding from some formless nightmare. With a quiet groan, he rose and splashed water on his face, mind already leaping to the tasks ahead. This day, the final arrangements for the royal progress would be made. He would speak with Robert about the Ironborn threat. Jaime might already have left the city. If not, there could be another confrontation. At first light, Ned dressed and found Jory in the corridor, the man looking more grim than usual. Jory reported that Sir Jaime had indeed ridden out in the night with a small escort of Lannister men, bound for the west. No violence had erupted. He simply departed, eyes cold and silent. The city then was free of the Kingslayer's presence. Yet that only meant the Lannisters would be reunited in their anger. Ned hurried through a brief meal of bread and honey, washing it down with watered wine. Then he sought out Robert in the royal stables, where the king was personally examining horses for the journey. Robert eyed each mount with the practiced glance of a man who knew war horses well, occasionally snapping at a stable hand who looked incompetent. Ned approached, gave a respectful inclination of his head. "Your Grace, I come with more tidings, though not pleasant ones." Robert turned, frowning. "What now?" Ned kept his voice low. "I've reason to believe Tywin is attempting to sway the Iron Islands to join him in some capacity. Possibly raids on the western or northern coasts to divide our forces." Robert's frown deepened into a scowl. "The Ironborn? 7 hells. We only put down their rebellion a handful of years ago." "I know. Greyjoy might relish a chance to strike again with Lannister gold backing him." The king cursed under his breath. "All right. I'll dispatch ravens at once, warn the coastal lords. I'll tell Stannis to keep watch from Dragonstone as well. He has the royal fleet. We'll see if the Ironborn dare test us. And if they do, I'll smash them again." He paused, anger stirring in his eyes, then exhaled. "This is all spiraling so quickly." Ned nodded, voice quiet. "We must be vigilant. We leave for Harrenhal soon. While we're away, the city watch will remain at the Red Keep under a commander we trust." Robert set his jaw. "Sir Barristan can oversee them, or at least ensure no bribery takes root. I can't trust all the gold cloaks. Too many have been in the Lannisters' pockets." Ned agreed. "It's wise. And we should name a Castellan or regent to handle smaller matters in your absence. Perhaps Lord Renly can remain for that purpose, or someone else you trust." Robert considered. "Renly is clever, but I'd rather have him with me. I might leave Baelish behind. Ironically, he's no warrior, but he can manage the day-to-day finances. Varys will remain as well. For intelligence. Yes, that should suffice." Ned's misgivings about leaving Baelish in any position of power flickered, but he recognized that Petter did handle coin with a certain skill, and if they were confronting a potential war, money might prove as vital as swords. "As you wish, Your Grace." Robert swiped a cloth across his brow, then tossed it aside. "The horses look fine enough. We'll ride out on the morrow, an hour after sunrise. Make sure everyone is ready." He hesitated, then his tone softened. "We'll face Tywin's challenge together, Ned. 7 forbid it come to bloodshed, but if it does, we'll do what we must," Ned finished. Robert clapped his shoulder, and in that moment, Ned saw a glint of the man he had once charged into battle beside. The man who had claimed the throne through raw courage and the love of his people. Robert said. "We will." That day passed in a blur of final arrangements. Ned coordinated with knights and lords from the Crown lands who would accompany them. He He saw to the wagons of supplies, ensuring there was enough food, tents, and provisions for a few weeks on the road. Messengers flew out to the riverlands, alerting local lords that the king would be passing through. At the same time, subtle hints were dropped that Tywin Lannister might be preparing for aggression, so the local garrisons should remain on guard. By late afternoon, the Red Keep buzzed with the tension of imminent departure. Horses were being walked, knights checking their armor, servants scrambling with crates of salted beef and barrels of fresh water. Sansa and Arya stood on a balcony, watching the frenzy below. Ned joined them briefly, placing a hand on each girl's shoulder. They both turned, looking at him with wide eyes. "You're going too?" Arya asked, as though only now realizing she might lose her father's company again. Ned nodded. "Yes, the king needs me. It's part of my duty as hand." Sansa cast her gaze downward. "But what if something terrible happens? What if the Lannisters attack you?" He tried to reassure them with a gentle smile. "We'll have loyal men with us, including Sir Barristan. We won't stray into danger if we can help it. We only mean to show our presence and ensure the realm's defenses are secure." Arya looked disappointed. "You won't take me, I suppose?" Ned shook his head, giving her a soft look. "Not this time, little one. You'll stay here with your sister and Septa Mordane. The city is safer now that the Queen and Joffrey are gone." Arya made a small face, but Sansa nodded glumly, as though she understood. Ned squeezed both their shoulders. "I return as soon as we've finished, and if war breaks out, you'll be evacuated to a safer place. I've already made arrangements for that. But let us pray it doesn't come to that." He departed them, heart heavy. He could see how frightened they both were, though in different ways. Sansa's fear stemmed from the heartbreak of her dashed marriage, and the prospect of further turmoil, while Arya's restless energy burned at the constraints that kept her from riding off on adventures of her own. In the Great Hall, Robert and Renly reviewed the route with a few knights. The plan was to ride first to Rosby, then to Maidenpool, and onward to Harrenhal. At each stop, the king would meet local lords, gauge their readiness, and possibly hold short audiences to address complaints. Then they would circle back through the Riverlands, perhaps even paying respects to Lord Hoster Tully, if his health allowed. Ned listened carefully, offering occasional input. He knew Harrenhal's reputation, an accursed fortress, many claimed. But it was a strategic point, towering over the God's Eye Lake, controlling a vital route between the west and the Crownlands. If Tywin wished to push east, Harrenhal would be a prime obstacle or a coveted stronghold. Nightfall arrived, and servants lit the braziers in the hall. Robert dined with his captains, though his appetite seemed lackluster. The tension of possibly facing Tywin's wrath weighed on everyone. Ned partook of the meal quietly, exchanging only a few words with Renly, who asked about the North's capacity to reinforce if war broke out. Ned answered, emphasizing that riders had been sent to Winterfell, but it would take time for large forces to arrive. The North was distant, and Tywin might strike swiftly. When the meal ended, Ned prepared to retire early, anticipating a dawn departure. He was about to leave the hall when Sir Barristan Selmy approached, white cloak trailing behind him, face sober. He bowed in that courteous way that reflected a lifetime of knightly duty. "My Lord Hand," Selmy said, "I wish to speak with you about the journey. The king desires I accompany him, which I shall. But we leave the city watch behind, under whose command?" Ned considered carefully. "We can trust Sir Jacelyn Bywater, I believe. He's proven himself loyal and not given to bribes." Selmy nodded. "A good choice. I wanted to ensure we weren't leaving a vacuum that the Lannisters could exploit. Though Jaime is gone, some of his men may linger." Ned ran a hand over his beard. "True. I'll instruct Bywater to remain vigilant, especially at the gates. If any large group of Lannister men tries to return, we'll know." Mouse. Selmy placed a hand over his breastplate. "I will see to the security of the king on the road. You need have no fear of ambush while we travel." Ned regarded the old knight with respect. "Your presence is a comfort, Sir Barristan. The king is fortunate to have you." He paused, weighing whether to say more. Finally he added, "And I am grateful for an honorable man's counsel in these times." Selmy's weathered features softened. "We do our best, Lord Stark. Let us hope it is enough." Nementwand. Ned excused himself and headed back to his chambers, where he spent the remainder of the night gathering documents, maps, and sealing letters to be carried along. He dozed off late, burdened with worry. When the first pale light seeped through his windows, he woke with a start. The day of departure had arrived. A flurry of activity consumed the morning. Horses saddled, wagons packed, arms and armor checked. Dozens of men-at-arms assembled in the courtyard, banners fluttering in the mild breeze. The crowned stag of House Baratheon, the direwolf of House Stark on Ned's men's shields, and a scattering of other sigils from loyal crownland houses. Robert appeared in his black and gold finery, though no crown rested on his brow. He preferred to ride as a warrior king, unencumbered by heavy metal on his head. Renly arrived on a sleek courser, cheer in his manner that seemed at odds with the gravity of their mission. Petyr Baelish emerged to bid them farewell, making a show of offering Robert a chest of coin as traveling funds. Robert shrugged off the theatrics but accepted. Varys stood discreetly to one side, offering soft-spoken good wishes. Ned oversaw last-minute checks, then mounted his own horse. He glanced up at a balcony where Sansa and Arya stood watching. He raised a hand in farewell, catching a glimpse of Arya waving back, and Sansa trying to muster a smile. He felt a pang, yet steeled himself. The realm demanded this journey. A handful of loyal knights would stay behind for the girl's safety, though Ned prayed no danger would come in his absence. At Robert's signal, the party set forth, hooves clattering on the cobblestones leading out of the Red Keep's courtyard. The early sun cast long shadows across the city as they wound through the streets, escorted by gold cloaks to keep the crowds at bay. Small folk lined the route, curious or fearful at the sight of the king and his retinue. Whispers passed among them, speaking of rumors, war with the West, betrayal, the Queen's exile. Ned could sense the city's unease. They crossed the Iron Gate and made their way onto the Rosby Road. The pace was steady, not hurried. Robert and Renly rode at the head, exchanging occasional remarks about the condition of the roads, the farmland. Ned rode close behind, scanning the surroundings. Barristan Selmy flanked the king on the other side, eyes vigilant beneath his white helm. By midday, the city was a distant blur behind them. They stopped briefly to water the horses, then pressed on. The rolling countryside spread out on either side, dotted with fields ready for harvesting. The common folk working the land stared as the royal party passed, many bowing uncertainly. That evening, they camped near a small stream, erecting tents and posting guards. Robert retreated early after a cursory meal, complaining of a headache. Renly tried to lighten the mood around the campfire, cracking jokes with the knights, but the air remained charged with dread. Ned ate sparingly, thinking of Tywin's legion somewhere to the west, potentially stirring, preparing. His thoughts also drifted to Sansa, Arya, and the precarious state he had left them in. When he finally lay down in his tent, the nighttime sounds of crickets and rustling leaves surrounded him. He closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Yet sleep remained elusive. He pictured Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock, golden eyes narrowed, counting the days until he could strike. He pictured Balon Greyjoy plotting raids on unsuspecting coasts. He pictured the Iron Throne standing in King's Landing, a seat of power threatened once again by the collisions of proud houses. Sometime in the quiet hours, Ned drifted off. A restless slumber came, haunted by images of ravens bearing dark messages, of gold lion banners arrayed against a field of dire wolf gray. The dreams blurred, dissolving into formless shadows. And so the first night of the journey ended with no answers, only the promise of more trials to come. Dawn arrived with a pale sunrise, painting the sky in muted tones. Ned roused himself, stepping out of the tent into the crisp morning air. The king's party stirred in the makeshift camp, men stamping their feet to shake off sleep, stable hands preparing the horses. Another day on the road. Another day closer to whatever confrontation lay ahead. He cast one final glance back in the direction of King's Landing. Though it was hidden beyond rolling hills and distant patches of forest, he could only pray that the city and his daughters would remain safe. Then he turned his horse forward, following Robert's banner as they resumed the march, dust rising beneath the hooves. The path lay before them, uncertain and fraught, Yet they rode on, bound by duty and honor, prepared to face the storms gathering on the horizon.